Standing in my empty new two-bedroom apartment, I held the keys so tightly they left marks on my palm. My phone buzzed with another voicemail from my father, his voice demanding I return these keys because the space wasn't big enough for my sister Sarah's family of 5. I thought about the 3 jobs I'd worked for 5 years, every penny saved while Sarah partied through college. The phone rang again, and this time I answered. "If you don't do right by family, you're no daughter of mine," he threatened. I looked at my hard-earned keys, remembering all those nights sleeping on friends' couches just to save rent money. Sunday dinner at my parents' house was supposed to be a celebration of my new apartment. Instead, I walked into what looked like a moving day operation. Boxes lined the hallway, each labeled with Sarah's handwriting. My sister sat on the couch, her 3 kids running circles around the coffee table, while her husband Jake scrolled through his phone, probably checking sports scores again. Perfect timing, Annabelle. My mother, Martha, said, not meeting my eyes as she folded clothes into another box. "We've been packing all morning." My stomach dropped. Packing for what? Sarah stood up, smoothing her designer dress that I knew cost more than my monthly grocery budget. "Mom and Dad told you about our situation, right? We need to be out by Friday." "What situation?" I kept my voice steady, though my hands trembled. My father Gerald entered from the kitchen, his face already set in that expression that meant he'd made a decision for everyone. "Your sister's family needs a place to stay. Your new apartment has 2 bedrooms. The math is simple." "Dad, I just signed the lease. It's my apartment." Jake finally looked up from his phone. "Come on, Annabelle, family helps family. Besides, it's just temporary until I get back on my feet." The same phrase he'd used 3 jobs ago, 4 gambling debts ago, 5 broken promises ago. How temporary? I asked, though I already knew there would be no real timeline. Sarah's youngest 4-year-old Tommy crashed into my legs. "Aunt Annie, Mommy says we're living with you now. Can I have the big room?" My mother bustled over, picking up Tommy. "See, the children are so excited. You wouldn't want to disappoint your nephews and niece, would you?" I looked around the room at the boxes, the expectant faces, the assumption that my dreams were less important than Sarah's poor choices. "When were you planning to ask me?" "We're asking now," Gerald said, his tone suggesting the conversation was already over. "No, you're telling me there's a difference." Sarah laughed, that tinkling sound she'd perfected to make everything seem less serious than it was. "Don't be dramatic, Annabelle. It's not like you need all that space for just yourself." "I need the space because I paid for it, with money I earned working 3 jobs while you were posting beach photos from Cancun." "That's enough," Gerald's voice boomed. "I won't have you throwing past mistakes in your sister's face." Mistakes. As if accidentally buying the wrong milk was the same as blowing through a trust fund on vacations and shopping sprees. Martha pulled out a manila folder. "We've already worked everything out. Sarah and Jake can take the master bedroom, the children can share the second room, and you can sleep on the couch. It's actually perfect." "You planned where I'd sleep in my own apartment." My voice came out smaller than intended. "Just until they get their own place," Martha added quickly. "Your father even called your landlord to explain the situation." The room spun. "You called my landlord?" Gerald puffed out his chest. "Mr. Peterson was very understanding. Said he remembered what it was like to be young with a family. I told him Sarah and Jake would be model tenants." "You told him—" I couldn't finish the sentence. The keys in my pocket felt heavier. Jake stood up, stretching like this was all a minor inconvenience. "We should probably start loading the truck. Want to get moved in before traffic gets bad." "Nobody's moving into my apartment." The words came out stronger than I felt. The room went silent except for the children's continued playing. Sarah's face shifted from amused to annoyed. "Annabelle, stop being selfish." "Selfish? I work doubles at the restaurant, overnight shifts at the warehouse, and weekend shifts at the coffee shop. I ate ramen for 2 years to save for the deposit. I've worn the same 3 pairs of shoes for 5 years because every dollar went to this dream. That's selfish." Gerald stepped forward. "What's selfish is having space you don't need while your sister's family faces homelessness. They're facing eviction because Jake gambled away their rent money. Again." I looked directly at my brother-in-law. How much did you lose this time? 5,010. Jake's face reddened. That's none of your business. It becomes my business when you expect to move into my apartment. Sarah grabbed her purse, pulling out her phone. You know what? I'm done begging. Mom, Dad, let's just go. If Annabelle wants to leave her nephews and niece on the street, that's on her conscience. Martha's eyes filled with tears on cue. I never thought I'd see the day when one of my daughters would turn her back on family. Where did we go wrong, Gerald? The guilt trip expressed right on schedule. But something felt different this time. There was a desperation in their movements, a coordination to their attack. Show her the papers, Sarah said quietly. My father pulled out another document from his jacket. Your mother found your rental agreement in your old room. We needed your landlord's contact information for emergency purposes. I snatched the papers from his hands. My eyes scanned the familiar lease agreement, but something was wrong. There were additional signatures, addendums I hadn't seen before. What is this? My hands shook as I read. Mr. Peterson was very accommodating, Gerald said smoothly. When I explained the family situation, he agreed to add Sarah and Jake as approved occupants, signed it himself. You forged my signature. The words came out as a whisper. We signed as your emergency contacts, Martha corrected. Perfectly legal. We're just looking out for your best interests. Sarah smiled victory, already gleaming in her eyes. So you see, Annabelle, it's already done. Fighting this will just make you look petty. I stared at the forged documents, at my family's expectant faces, at the boxes ready to invade my sanctuary. 5 years of sacrifice, and they'd tried to steal it with a few pen strokes. Tommy tugged on my jeans. Aunt Annie, are you sad? Mommy said you might be sad at first, but you'll learn to share. Even the children had been coached. I put the papers in my purse and headed for the door. I need to go. Where are you going? Gerald demanded. We're not finished here. I turned back, looking at each of them. My father red-faced with authority, my mother wielding tears like weapons, Sarah already mentally redecorating my apartment, Jake calculating how much he could borrow against my security deposit. Yes, we are. If any of you show up at my apartment, I'm calling the police. You wouldn't dare, Sarah gasped. Try me. I left them surrounded by boxes meant for my home, their shock following me out the door. But I caught Sarah's final words to our parents. Don't worry, she'll cave. She always does. Not this time. This time everything would be different. Monday morning started with 17 missed calls and 43 text messages. I'd turned off my phone Sunday night after leaving my parents' house, but the digital guilt trip had accumulated overnight, like snow on a windshield. My mother's voicemails ranged from tearful pleas about grandmother's love to sharp reminders about everything they'd done for me, each message carefully crafted to hit a different emotional pressure point. Annabelle, sweetheart, I couldn't sleep last night thinking about little Mia asking why Aunt Annie doesn't want them to have a home. One message began. Another took a harsher approach. Your father is devastated. His blood pressure is through the roof. If something happens to him, I hope you can live with yourself. I deleted them all without listening to the end. Tuesday brought phase 2 of the campaign. Sarah discovered social media warfare. Her posts started subtle. Some people forget where they came from, accompanied by a photo of her children looking sad. By Wednesday, she'd escalated to full narrative construction, teaching my babies that sometimes family disappointments are life's hardest lessons, grateful for parents who still believe in unconditional love. The comments poured in from distant relatives and family friends who didn't know the whole story. What happened, honey? Praying for your family. Some people don't deserve the blessing of family. My coworker Jennifer found me crying in the break room after a particularly vicious post featuring a photo of Sarah's kids eating sandwiches on a park bench with the caption, "Making the best of a tough situation. My angels deserve better." What's going on? Jennifer asked, sliding into the seat across from me. I showed her the posts. She scrolled through them, her expression growing darker. This is manipulation, pure and simple. 67 people have already shared it, I said, watching the count climb. My high school friends are messaging me asking why I'm letting my nephews go homeless. Are they actually homeless? They're living with my parents in a 5-bedroom house with a pool. Jennifer snorted. Of course they are. Thursday afternoon, the campaign went nuclear. I was helping a customer at the boutique where I worked my second job when I heard his voice boom across the store. Annabelle Marie Hutchinson. My father stood in the doorway like an avenging angel, his presence commanding everyone's attention. Customers turned to stare. My manager, Brenda, stepped out from behind the counter. Sir, can I help you? Gerald ignored her, striding toward me with papers clutched in his hand. You want to abandon family, fine, but you'll do it publicly so everyone knows what kind of person you are. Dad, this is my workplace. Please leave. Your workplace? He laughed bitterly. You work 3 jobs and still can't find room in your heart for your sister's family. What's the point of all that money if you're morally bankrupt? The customer I'd been helping backed away slowly. Other shoppers pretended to browse while obviously listening. My face burned with humiliation. Sir, I need you to leave, Brenda said firmly. Gerald turned on her. Do you know what kind of person you employ? She has a luxury apartment while her sister's children go without stable housing. Is that the kind of heartless employee you want representing your store? That's enough. Brenda's voice could have cut glass. Security is on the way. I suggest you leave voluntarily. He threw the papers at my feet. Eviction notice for Sarah. Effective tomorrow. I hope you're happy. He looked around the store, making sure his audience was watching. Everyone here should know that Annabelle Hutchinson chooses money over blood. Security arrived as he stormed out, but the damage was done. Customers whispered among themselves. One woman shook her head at me disapprovingly. The papers on the floor turned out to be nothing, just blank forms he'd printed for effect. Take your break, Brenda said quietly. I found myself on the loading dock trying to breathe through the shame and anger. My phone buzzed with messages from co-workers at my other jobs. Word was spreading fast. Friday morning, Jennifer intercepted me at the coffee shop before my shift. We need to talk. Her face told me everything. He came here, too. Yesterday evening, made a scene during the dinner rush. Told everyone you were mentally unstable, suggested you might be stealing to afford your fancy apartment. He said what? Carla recorded the whole thing on her phone. He went on for 10 minutes about your psychological issues and how the family's been trying to get you help. Jennifer pulled out her phone, showing me the video. There was my father performing for an audience of coffee shop patrons describing a daughter I didn't recognize. According to him, I'd always been jealous of Sarah, had anger management problems, couldn't maintain relationships because of my emotional instability. That's not even the worst part, Jennifer continued. He talked to Marcus. Marcus, our shift manager. Marcus, who decided schedules and promotions. Marcus, who I'd been hoping would recommend me for the assistant manager position. He suggested the stress might be affecting your work performance, Jennifer said. Mentioned he noticed you crying in your car last week. I had been crying in my car after watching Sarah's kids' birthday party photos on social media, remembering all the birthdays I'd missed while working to save for my apartment. Gerald had twisted even that private moment into evidence of instability. Marcus wants to meet with you before your shift. The meeting was brief and brutal. While Marcus assured me my job was safe, he suggested I take some time to sort out personal matters. The subject of the assistant manager position never came up. We both knew it was off the table now. Saturday brought the relatives. Aunt Helen called during my morning shift at the warehouse. Honey, I heard about the situation. Your mother is beside herself. Maybe you could compromise, let them stay just for a month. Uncle Terry texted during my afternoon break at the restaurant. Your grandfather would be ashamed. He always said family comes first. Cousin Patricia left a voicemail during my evening shift at the boutique. I know Sarah can be difficult, but those children don't deserve to suffer for adult problems. Each message carefully avoided mentioning Jake's gambling or Sarah's spending. In their version, I was the only villain in this story. Sunday arrived with an intervention disguised as a family brunch invitation from Aunt Helen. I declined claiming work. The truth was, I'd called in sick to all 3 jobs and spent the day in my apartment, sitting on the floor of my empty living room, wondering if standing my ground was worth losing everyone. My phone rang as the sun set. Brenda from the boutique. "I've been thinking about what happened Thursday," she began. "In 20 years of retail, I've seen a lot of family drama, but that was something else." "I'm so sorry. I never imagined he'd come to my workplace." "That's just it, Annabelle. You didn't bring drama to work. He did. And from what I observed, his performance was just that, a performance." "What do you mean?" "I watched him before he came in. He sat in his car for 10 minutes, checking his phone, waiting until we had maximum customers. He chose his moment for maximum impact." I thought about the blank eviction papers, the practice speech, the way he'd made sure everyone could hear him. "Brenda, there's something else. He told Marcus at the coffee shop that I might be stealing." She was quiet for a moment. "That's defamation, Annabelle, and it's escalating. What does he want from you?" "He wants me to house my sister's family of 5 in my 2-bedroom apartment. They forged documents with my landlord, told everyone I already agreed." "Have you talked to a lawyer?" "I can't afford a lawyer. I spent everything on the apartment." "My brother-in-law is an attorney. Let me make some calls." After we hung up, I sat in the gathering darkness of my apartment. Tomorrow would bring new tactics, new guilt, new public humiliations. But something was shifting. Other people were seeing through the manipulation. I wasn't completely alone. My phone buzzed with one final message of the day, from Marcus at the coffee shop. "Hey, Annabelle, found out some interesting stuff about your dad's visit. Call me when you can." For the first time all week, I felt something other than dread. Maybe Sarah was wrong. Maybe this time I wouldn't cave after all. Pastor Williams called Tuesday morning while I was restocking shelves at the warehouse. His voice carried that practiced concern that made you feel guilty before he even explained why he was calling. "Annabelle, I'd like you to come in for a counseling session this evening. Your spiritual well-being is important to us." I hadn't attended Living Grace Church regularly since moving out of my parents' house, but they still considered me part of the flock. "Pastor Williams, I appreciate the concern, but I'm working until 9 tonight." "Your mother mentioned you might say that. This is important, child. Sometimes we need to prioritize our souls over our schedules." The mention of my mother set off alarm bells. "Did my parents ask you to call?" "They're concerned about you, as am I." 6 o'clock my office. "I'll keep the lights on if you're running late." He hung up before I could refuse again. I spent the rest of my shift debating whether to go. Ignoring a pastor's summons in our community was like declaring spiritual warfare. The gossip would spread faster than wildfire. I arrived at 6:15 still in my warehouse uniform, exhaustion weighing on every step. The church parking lot should have been empty on a Tuesday evening. Instead, I counted 14 cars, including my parents' silver sedan and Sarah's new SUV that she somehow afforded despite facing eviction. The sanctuary doors opened before I could knock. Deacon Foster smiled sadly as if I were arriving for my own funeral. "They're waiting in the fellowship hall." Not Pastor Williams' office then. The fellowship hall meant an audience. I pushed through the double doors to find my extended family arranged in a semicircle of folding chairs. Parents, aunts, uncles, cousins, even great-aunt Mabel, who hadn't left her house since Obama's first term. Sarah sat in the center, flanked by her children dressed in their Sunday best on a Tuesday. She'd even styled Mia's hair in those complicated braids that took hours. Pastor Williams stood at the front Bible already open. "Sister Annabelle, thank you for joining us." "This isn't a counseling session," I said, not moving from the doorway. "Please sit." He gestured to a single chair facing the group, the judgment seat. "Your family has gathered in love to help guide you back to righteousness." Jake wasn't there, I noticed. Probably at the casino while his wife performed for sympathy. I remained standing. "I'm not sitting in that chair like I'm on trial." "Nobody's on trial," Aunt Helen said, clutching her pearls. "We're here because we love you." Love. I looked around the room. Where was this love when I was working 3 jobs, when I was sleeping in my car between shifts to save gas money? Dramatic as always, Sarah muttered loud enough for everyone to hear. Pastor Williams raised his hand for silence. Let us begin with prayer. They bowed their heads. I kept mine raised, watching them perform their piety. The prayer went on for minutes, asking God to soften my heart, to remove the spirit of selfishness, to restore me to the loving daughter they once knew. Amen, they chorused. Uncle Robert cleared his throat. Annabelle, your mother tells us you've refused to help Sarah in her time of need. I refused to let 5 people move into my 2-bedroom apartment without my permission. The Bible says whoever has 2 tunics should share with him who has none, Cousin Patricia quoted. You have 2 bedrooms while your nephews face homelessness. They're not homeless. They're living with Mom and Dad. Sarah's middle child, 8-year-old Ethan, suddenly burst into tears. I don't want to be homeless. Why doesn't Aunt Annie love us anymore? The timing was too perfect. I saw Sarah's subtle hand squeeze before Ethan's performance began. See what you're doing to these children, my mother cried. They're traumatized. Pastor Williams opened his Bible. Let me read from 1 John. If anyone has material possessions and sees his brother in need, but has no pity on him, how can the love of God be in him? For 40 minutes, they took turns. Bible verses about selfishness, personal anecdotes about my childhood selfishness, mostly fabricated or wildly exaggerated. Testimonies about Sarah's struggles as a young mother, not one mention of Jake's gambling addiction or Sarah's spending habits. Great Aunt Mabel struggled to her feet, leaning heavily on her walker. In my 87 years, I've never seen such cruelty within a family. Your grandmother would roll over in her grave. The grandmother card. They'd pulled out the heavy artillery. My grandmother, I said slowly, worked 2 jobs to buy her own house. She'd understand exactly why I won't let someone destroy what I've worked for. How dare you invoke Mother's memory to justify your selfishness? Gerald roared, jumping to his feet. That's when I noticed the envelope in Pastor Williams' hand. The church logo was visible through the paper, a donation envelope. Before we continue, the pastor said, the congregation has been moved by your family's situation. They've taken up a special collection. He held up the envelope thick with what must have been hundreds of dollars. This money was raised to help with the spiritual counseling you clearly need, Annabelle, to help soften your heart toward family. Sarah's eyes locked onto that envelope with laser focus. That's very generous, I said carefully. I'm sure Sarah could use that money for her children's needs while she looks for appropriate housing. This money is specifically for your spiritual healing, Pastor Williams clarified. We'll hold it in trust until you demonstrate a change of heart. I almost laughed. They were literally holding money hostage to force my compliance. Martha stood up, pulling out a gift-wrapped package. We also brought you something. She handed me a new Bible, leather-bound and expensive. I opened it to find dozens of highlighted passages all about family duty and selfishness. Sticky notes marked particularly condemning verses. They'd turned scripture into a weapon. We spent hours preparing this for you, Aunt Helen said, so you can study and understand where you've gone astray. Tommy, the youngest, started wandering around the room, clearly bored. He reached for the donation envelope in Pastor Williams' hand. Sarah quickly redirected him, but I caught the flash of calculation in her eyes. I appreciate the gift, I said, closing the Bible. I'll be sure to read all of it, including the parts about honesty, good stewardship, and not enabling destructive behavior. Enabling, Uncle Terry scoffed. You're the one enabling your own greed. Let me ask you all something. I said, exhaustion making me bold. How much money has Sarah borrowed from each of you over the years? How many times has Jake promised to pay you back? Uncomfortable shifting filled the room. That's not relevant, Pastor Williams said quickly. Isn't it you're asking me to enable the same behavior you've all cut off? When was the last time any of you loaned them money? This isn't about money, Sarah stood dramatically. It's about family. You'd rather see your nephews suffer than share your precious apartment. She gestured to her children who looked more tired than traumatized. Mia yawned widely, ruining the effect. "You know what?" I said, backing toward the door. "You're right. This isn't about money. It's about manipulation. It's about using children as props, turning faith into a crowbar and expecting me to light myself on fire to keep you warm." Annabelle Marie Hutchinson. My father's voice thundered through the hall. "You will not speak to your family this way in God's house." "Then I'll leave God's house." I tucked the weaponized Bible under my arm. "Thank you for making it clear that my worth to this family is measured only by what you can take from me." "If you walk out that door, you're walking away from your family," Sarah threatened. I paused at the threshold. "Promise." The last thing I heard before the doors closed was Pastor Williams beginning another prayer for my wayward soul. But I caught something else, too, the sound of shuffling feet and rustling paper. Someone was already moving toward that donation envelope. In the parking lot, I sat in my car and flipped through the gifted Bible. There, tucked between pages, was a church bulletin. The announcement section mentioned a special collection taken up for a family in need within our congregation. The amount raised $2,000. I thought about going back, warning Pastor Williams, but then I remembered him holding that envelope like bait, using God's money to manipulate me. My phone buzzed. A text from Marcus at the coffee shop. "Security footage from your dad's visit is very interesting. He met with someone in the parking lot afterward, exchanged something. Call me." Then another from Brenda. "My brother-in-law, the lawyer, wants to meet with you. Free consultation. Says you have a case." As I drove away from Living Grace Church, I realized something. They thought they'd cornered me with guilt and God. Instead, they'd revealed their true selves. And apparently, I wasn't the only one starting to see through their holy charade. The call came at exactly 2:17 a.m. Wednesday morning, jarring me from the first decent sleep I'd had all week. My mother's contact photo illuminated the darkness, and for a split second, muscle memory almost made me ignore it. But the time made me answer. Nobody called at 2 a.m. unless someone was dying. "Annabelle," my mother's voice cracked with hysteria. "It's Tommy. He's at St. Mary's Hospital. You need to come now." Ice flooded my veins. Whatever anger I held toward my family vanished in the face of a 4-year-old in danger. "What happened? Is he okay?" "Just come emergency room. He's been asking for you." The line went dead. I threw on yesterday's clothes, grabbed my keys, and drove those 16 miles in 11 minutes, running 2 red lights and praying no cops were watching. My mind raced through possibilities: accident, sudden illness, allergic reaction. Tommy had always been the fragile one, prone to ear infections and mysterious fevers. St. Mary's emergency room was surprisingly busy for a Wednesday night. I scanned the waiting area but didn't see my family. The triage nurse directed me to room 12 after checking her computer with a puzzled expression. I burst through the curtain to find Tommy sitting cross-legged on the hospital bed, still in his pajamas playing with a toy dinosaur. No IV, no monitors, no signs of distress. Sarah sat in the visitor's chair, scrolling through her phone, while my parents flanked the bed like sentinels. "What's the emergency?" I panted, adrenaline still coursing through me. Tommy looked up with bright, perfectly healthy eyes. "Aunt Annie, look, I got a new dinosaur from the gift shop." The relief of seeing him unharmed lasted exactly 3 seconds before rage took over. "He's fine. You called me at 2 in the morning because he's fine." "We needed to talk to you," Gerald said calmly, as if summoning someone with a fake medical emergency was perfectly reasonable. "Are you insane? I thought he was dying. I ran red lights." Sarah finally looked up from her phone. "Drama queen as always. We said he was at the hospital, not that he was dying. You said emergency room. Mom said he was asking for me." "He was asking for you," Martha defended. "He asked why Aunt Annie doesn't want us to live with her. It broke our hearts." I stared at them, genuinely wondering if I was hallucinating. "You faked a medical emergency to guilt trip me." "Nobody faked anything," Gerald said, pulling out a folder. "We're here for a real emergency, a family emergency. Sit down." "I'm not sitting anywhere. I'm leaving." I turned toward the curtain, but Sarah's next words stopped me cold. "Jake's lawyer says you have to take us in." I spun around. What lawyer? She smiled that predatory expression she'd perfected in high school when she'd spread rumors about girls she didn't like. The one who specializes in tenant law. Turns out, when a family member is facing homelessness and another family member has adequate space, there are legal provisions. That's not a real law. Isn't it? A man pushed through the curtain and I recognized him instantly. Carl Morrison, Jake's poker buddy, the one who'd been banned from 2 casinos for card counting. He wore an ill-fitting suit and carried a briefcase that had seen better days. Ms. Hutchinson, he said, formally producing business cards that still smelled like fresh ink. Carl Morrison, attorney at law. I specialize in family housing disputes. You're not a lawyer. You sell used cars. I passed the bar last month, he said proudly. Online program, your family is my first case. Gerald beamed like this was something to celebrate. Carl's been advising us on the legal aspects of our situation. The legal aspects of trying to steal my apartment. Carl opened his briefcase, revealing a stack of printed pages that looked suspiciously like Wikipedia articles. According to precedent in Smith versus Johnson, you just made that up. Family members have certain obligations during housing crises. Your sister's eviction constitutes such a crisis. Tommy had lost interest in the adult conversation and was making his dinosaur attack the blood pressure monitor. At least someone was having fun during this insane ambush. Even if any of that were true, which it's not, you'd need actual court documents, not whatever you printed at Kinko's. Sarah pulled out her phone. Oh, I have documents. I've been recording all our conversations. Every cruel thing you've said about not helping family. She hit play on a recording. My voice came through tinny but clear. Won't let you destroy worked for... But it was chopped up, edited. She'd spliced together pieces to remove context, making me sound heartless and unstable. I also have witnesses, she continued. Everyone at church heard you say you don't care if we're homeless. That's not what I said. That's what they heard, Gerald interjected. Perception is reality in court. Carl nodded sagely as if this was profound legal wisdom rather than corporate buzzword nonsense. My client has an excellent case. However, we're willing to settle out of court. Settle what there's no case? Just let them stay for 6 months, Martha pleaded. By then, Jake will have his new job sorted out and they'll move on. 6 months, Annabelle. That's all. Jake's new job. I looked at my brother-in-law, who hadn't said a word yet. What new job? He shifted uncomfortably. Got some irons in the fire, big opportunities coming up. Gambling opportunities. See, Sarah thrust her phone at Carl. She's slandering him. That's defamation. Carl scribbled notes on a legal pad. Interesting. We could add a defamation claim. A nurse poked her head through the curtain, looking concerned. Is everything okay in here? We're getting complaints about the noise. We're fine, Gerald assured her. Just having a family discussion. She looked skeptical, but left. I wondered what she'd think if she knew they'd faked a medical emergency for Tommy. I need to show you something, Carl said, producing another document. This is a draft of the lawsuit we'll file if you continue to refuse reasonable accommodation. I scanned the paper. It was a mess of legal-sounding gibberish, citing laws that I was pretty sure didn't exist, and claiming damages for intentional infliction of emotional distress and familial abandonment. This is toilet paper, I said, handing it back. No judge would even look at it. Maybe, Carl admitted. But defending against it would cost you thousands in legal fees. Can you afford that after spending everything on your apartment? There it was, the real threat. They couldn't win legally, but they could drain me financially by forcing me to fight their nonsense in court. Tommy yawned widely, reminding everyone that it was nearly 3 a.m. and a 4-year-old was being kept awake for this manipulation. You brought your child to a hospital in the middle of the night to threaten me. Sarah shrugged. The emergency room visit gives us documentation, shows how stressed we are about the housing situation. Carl says emotional distress is important for the case. Plus, we figured you wouldn't make a scene in a hospital, Gerald added. They'd thought of everything, or so they believed. You're right. I said quietly. I won't make a scene in a hospital, but you know who might be interested in this situation. The hospital administration. I wonder what they'd think about people using their emergency room for fake emergencies, wasting resources that could help actually sick children. Martha's face went pale. You wouldn't. I also wonder what the Bar Association would think about Carl's creative interpretation of laws. First case, and already committing fraud. Carl's confident expression wavered. Now let's not be hasty. And those edited recordings, Sarah Pretty, sure that's illegal. What's it called, Carl? In your vast legal expertise. He mumbled something about wiretapping laws and context. Here's what's going to happen. I said, finding strength I didn't know I had. You're going to take Tommy home and let him sleep. You're going to stop harassing me at work, at church, and at hospitals. And Carl here is going to remember that impersonating a real lawyer when you got your degree from an online diploma mill is a crime. I am a real lawyer, Carl protested. Then act like one. Sarah stood up, gathering Tommy into her arms. This isn't over. We know where you live, what you drive, where you work. We'll make your life hell until you give in. Sarah, Martha scolded, don't threaten your sister. But the mask had slipped. They all saw it, the real Sarah beneath the desperate mother act. Actually, please do keep threatening me, I said, pulling out my phone. I've been recording too, every word since I realized this was an ambush. Unlike yours, mine isn't edited. The silence in that little emergency room was deafening. Gerald recovered first, blustering about privacy laws, but Carl had gone pale. He knew real legal consequences when he saw them. I left them there to figure out how to explain their fake emergency to the hospital staff. In the parking lot, my hands shook so badly I had to sit in my car for 20 minutes before I could drive. My phone buzzed. Marcus from the coffee shop. Can you meet tomorrow? Found out who your dad met with after his scene here. You're not going to believe this. Then Brenda. My brother-in-law reviewed the security footage I sent. Says you have enough for a restraining order. Also, he found something interesting about your landlord. As I drove home in the pre-dawn darkness, I realized something had shifted tonight. They'd overplayed their hand with the fake emergency. The masks were slipping. The truth was starting to surface. But if I thought they'd reached their lowest point, I was wrong. Rock bottom, it turned out, still had several floors. Thursday morning arrived with an inbox full of concern. 23 emails from coworkers across all 3 jobs, each one some variation of, "Are you okay?" and "Your family seems really worried about you." The campaign had shifted into overdrive. At the warehouse, I found my supervisor, Phil, waiting by my locker, his expression grim. "Annabelle, we need to talk." My stomach dropped. About, "Your father called corporate yesterday. Said you've been stealing merchandise to furnish your new apartment." What? The word came out as a whisper. Phil held up his hand. "I don't believe it. You've worked here for 4 years without a single incident, but corporate requires me to investigate any allegations. This is insane. I've never taken so much as a paperclip." "I know, but I need to search your locker. Protocol." I opened it immediately, revealing nothing but my lunch, a change of clothes and photos of my empty apartment that I'd taped inside the door, my motivation during long shifts. Phil made a show of checking everything, then nodded. "We'll also need to review security footage from the past month. You'll be on paid administrative leave until it's cleared up." "Phil, I need this job. You know I work 3 jobs just to survive." His expression softened, "Which is why I'm fast-tracking the investigation. But Annabelle, your father, also called OSHA claiming unsafe working conditions, and the Department of Labor about wage violations. It's like he's trying to shut us down." The revelation hit me like a physical blow. He wasn't just targeting me anymore, he was going after my employers. I drove to the coffee shop in a daze, arriving to find the morning rush in full chaos. Jennifer grabbed me before I could clock in. "Emergency staff meeting now." The break room was packed, my coworkers looking confused and worried. Marcus stood at the front, his usual easygoing demeanor replaced by something harder. "Someone has been leaving fake reviews for us online," he began. 47 one-star reviews in the past 3 days, all claiming food poisoning, racist staff, and health code violations. He pulled up his tablet, showing us the reviews. The writing style was unmistakably Sarah's dramatic, slightly pompous, with her signature overuse of exclamation points. They're using different names, but the IP addresses are all from the same neighborhood. Anyone want to guess which neighborhood? Everyone turned to look at me. My sister, I said quietly. I'm so sorry. It gets worse, Marcus continued. Someone called the health department claiming they saw rats. They're coming for a surprise inspection tomorrow. There are no rats, Jennifer protested. Of course not, but an inspection during morning rush will kill our business. Marcus looked directly at me. Your family is trying to destroy our livelihood to get to you. The guilt threatened to crush me. I'll quit. If I leave, they'll stop. Like hell, Marcus said firmly. We don't negotiate with terrorists even if they're related to our employees. But Annabelle, I need you to see something. He led me to his office and pulled up security footage from Gerald's visit. There was my father making his scene about my mental health, but Marcus fast-forwarded to afterward showing Gerald in the parking lot meeting with someone. Recognize him. I leaned closer. That's Dale Morrison. He owns the pawn shop on 5th Street. And he's Carl Morrison's father, the fake lawyer from the hospital. The pieces clicked together. They're planning something. Already did it. Dale called this morning claiming you pawned stolen coffee equipment at his shop, wanted to do the right thing and return it. That's impossible. I've never even been in his shop. I know, but he has receipts with your forged signature and fuzzy security footage of someone your height and build. Marcus paused. Your family isn't just trying to guilt you anymore. They're trying to frame you. My phone buzzed. Brenda from the boutique. Don't come in today, I'll explain later. I have to go, I told Marcus. Annabelle, wait. My cousin is a private investigator, former cop. He owes me a favor. I can't afford a private investigator. You can't afford not to have one. They're escalating. This isn't about your apartment anymore. They're trying to destroy your entire life. I drove to the boutique even though Brenda had warned me off. I needed to know how bad it was. I found her outside intercepting customers at the door. I told you not to come, she said, but her voice was gentle. What happened? She sighed. Your mother and sister staged a scene this morning. Your mother pretended to faint while your sister accused you of stealing from the register to pay for your apartment. In front of customers, in front of the regional manager, she was here for a routine visit. Brenda's expression was pained. Annabelle, I have to put you on suspension, just until this is sorted out. Brenda, I know, everyone knows, but corporate has procedures. Your sister filed a formal complaint with pictures. Pictures of what? Brenda showed me her phone. There were photos of me at the register carefully cropped and angled to look suspicious. One showed me putting something in my pocket, my phone. Another showed me with cash in my hand making change. Without context, they looked damning. She must have been taking these for weeks, I breathed. Planning this for a while, I'd guess. But here's the interesting part. My brother-in-law, the lawyer, he did some digging on your landlord's situation. She handed me a folder. Your parents didn't just forge your signature on apartment addendums. They've been impersonating you for months. Inside were credit applications, utility accounts, even a car lease, all in my name, all with signatures that weren't mine. The dates went back to before I'd even found my apartment. This wasn't about housing Sarah, I said slowly. This was always about destroying me if I didn't comply. My brother-in-law wants to meet with you today. This is criminal identity theft, Annabelle. Your family has crossed way over the line. My phone rang, Phil from the warehouse. Annabelle, we reviewed the security footage. You're clear, obviously, but there's something you should see. Can you come back? I'll be right there. At the warehouse, Phil led me to the security office. Watch this from 2 weeks ago. The footage showed the employee parking lot at night. A figure approached my car, did something to the lock, then entered. They were inside for maybe 5 minutes before leaving. Now watch their hands when they come out. The figure, impossible to identify in the darkness, was carrying something. Papers. I had registration documents in there. Insurance info, I said. With your personal information, address, signature samples. Phil fast-forwarded to another date. They came back 3 more times, always late at night. Always took photos or documents. Why didn't security notice? They used an employee access code. Your father still had his visitor badge information from when he legitimate visited 6 months ago for your birthday lunch. My birthday lunch. When I'd been stupid enough to think we could have one normal family interaction. He'd been casing my workplace even then. There's more, Phil continued. We checked the other cameras. Someone matching your sister's description has been photographing employee schedules, delivery manifests, anything with your name on it. For how long? At least 6 weeks, long before the apartment situation. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. A photo of my apartment door taken from the hallway. No message, just the image. Then another. My car in the coffee shop parking lot. Another, me through the boutique window from that morning. The messages kept coming. Photos of me at different locations, different times, all recent. They were watching me, documenting my movements. The final message wasn't a photo, just words, "You can't run from family." "I need to go to the police," I said. Phil nodded. "I'll write up everything we found for your report. Annabelle, whoever in your family is doing this, they're not well. This is stalking." I sat in my car in the warehouse parking lot staring at the photos. They'd been following me, planning this for weeks. The apartment wasn't the trigger. It was just the excuse they'd been waiting for. Marcus called. "My cousin, the PI, wants the photos they sent. He says this establishes a pattern of harassment. Also, he ran the names you gave him. Carl Morrison. Not a lawyer. Failed the bar exam 4 times. His license to practice is fake. Can we prove it?" "Already did. My cousin has connections at the Bar Association. They're very interested in someone practicing law without a license." A small victory, but I'd take it. My phone rang. Jennifer. "Don't come back to the coffee shop today. Your mom's been sitting outside for 2 hours with a sign. A sign says, 'My daughter chose money over family.' She's telling everyone who'll listen that you're mentally ill and off your medication." "I'm not on medication." "I know, but she's convincing. She's got tears and everything. A customer gave her $20. I laughed. I couldn't help it. The absurdity of it all, my mother panhandling outside my workplace with lies about my mental health, while my father committed identity theft and my sister stalked me with a camera. "Annabelle, you okay?" "No," I admitted. "But I'm starting to understand. This isn't about my apartment, this is about control, and they're losing it." After I hung up, I noticed something in one of the stalking photos. In the background of the coffee shop parking lot, shot barely visible, a blue sedan with someone sitting inside. I zoomed in. Uncle Robert, my mother's brother, the one who'd been at the church intervention. They had the whole family involved. A network of stalkers, saboteurs, and spies, all united in destroying my life because I dared to say no. But they'd made a crucial mistake. They'd left evidence, lots of it. And for the first time since this started, I wasn't just defending myself. I was ready to fight back. Friday the 13th seemed like an appropriate date for my financial world to implode. The first call came while I was driving to meet Brenda's brother-in-law, attorney David Chen, who'd agreed to see me despite the chaos. "Ms. Hutchinson, this is Fraud Protection Services from First National Bank. We're calling about unusual activity on your account." I pulled over, hazard lights flashing. What kind of unusual activity? "Multiple overdraft attempts from various merchants. Did you authorize a payment of $8,000 to Lucky Strike Casino?" $8,000. I don't have $8,000. The transaction was declined due to insufficient funds. However, we show 17 other attempted transactions totaling over $32,000 in the past hour. My hands shook as I gripped the phone. I didn't authorize any of those. "We're freezing your account immediately. You'll need to come to a branch with identification to sort this out. Wait, if my account is frozen, how do I... The representative had already hung up. My phone immediately rang again. Different number. Is this Annabelle Hutchinson? This is Collections Department from Platinum Credit. Your account is severely past due. I don't have a Platinum credit card. Ma'am, you opened this account 6 weeks ago. You've maxed out the $20,000 limit and haven't made a single payment. 6 weeks ago, right when Phil said the break-ins to my car started. This is fraud. I never opened that account. That's what they all say, ma'am. We'll be pursuing legal action. By the time I reached Attorney Chen's office, I'd received 11 more calls. Credit cards I'd never heard of. Personal loans from predatory lenders. Even a boat loan because apparently I decided to buy a 40-foot yacht while living on ramen noodles. David Chen looked like he'd stepped out of a legal drama sharp suit, sharper mind, and an expression that suggested he'd seen everything. His assistant had me wait 20 minutes while he finished another call, giving me time to field 6 more creditor calls. Ms. Hutchinson. He finally called me in. Brenda filled me in on the basics, but I have a feeling the situation has escalated since yesterday. I showed him my phone. 43 missed calls from various creditors since 9 a.m. He listened without interrupting as I explained everything. The identity theft, the workplace sabotage, the stalking photos. His expression grew increasingly grim as I showed him the evidence. Your family has declared war, he said finally. This goes far beyond simple harassment. Can you help? I can, but first we need to document everything. Have you filed a police report? I'm going after this. Good. We'll need that for the identity theft charges. He pulled out a legal pad. Tell me about the credit applications. Do you have any idea how they got your information? I told him about the car break-ins, the stolen documents, the fact that they'd had my social security number since birth. He took meticulous notes. The good news is this is traceable. Credit applications require addresses, phone numbers. If they use their own, we've got them. My phone buzzed. A text from my apartment complex. Urgent multiple complaints about your unit. Please contact office immediately. I need to make a call, I said. David nodded. Put it on speaker. I want to hear this. I called the apartment office. Sheila, the property manager, answered on the first ring. Annabelle, thank God. We've been getting calls all morning. Noise complaints, drug activity reports, claims of unauthorized occupants. Someone even called the fire marshal saying you've created a hoarding situation. Sheila, I live alone. I don't even have furniture yet. How can I be hoarding? I know it's nonsense, but I'm required to investigate every complaint. Can I come by this evening? Of course. There's something else. Your father came by again, this time with someone claiming to be a social worker, said they're concerned about your mental state and your ability to live independently. David had been scribbling notes. He pushed a paper toward me. Get the social worker's name and agency. Did they give you a card or agency information? I asked. Now that you mention it, no. They said they'd be back with proper documentation. After I hung up, David leaned back. Impersonating a social worker is a federal crime. Your family is racking up quite a list. My phone rang again. This time it was my bank. Ms. Hutchinson, I'm calling from the mortgage department. We received your application but need additional documentation. What mortgage application? For the $500,000 loan. Using your new apartment as collateral. I nearly dropped the phone. I'm renting. I don't own the apartment. How could I use it as collateral? Confused silence. We have a deed here with your signature. That's impossible. David gestured for the phone. This is Attorney David Chen representing Ms. Hutchinson. Please freeze that application immediately and preserve all documentation. We'll be filing fraud charges. The bank representative's tone changed instantly. Of course, sir. We'll flag the account and alert our fraud department. After he hung up, David looked at me with something like awe. They tried to forge a property deed. That's ambitious and incredibly stupid. They're desperate, I said. But why go to these lengths over an apartment? This isn't about the apartment anymore. Maybe it never was. He pulled up something on his computer. When someone goes to these extremes, identity theft, stalking, property fraud, it's about total control or total destruction. But I'm their daughter, their sister, which gives them emotional leverage and personal information most criminals would kill for. He turned his screen toward me. I did some quick research while you were waiting. Your sister Sarah, has she ever been arrested? Not that I know of. Well, Sarah Hutchinson of your parents' address has been named in 3 civil suits, all involving money or property that wasn't hers. My jaw dropped. What? 2 former roommates and an ex-boyfriend. All claimed she stole from them or took out credit in their names. All cases were settled out of court. How did I not know about this? Because your parents probably paid to keep it quiet, but court records are public. He pulled up another screen. Your brother-in-law, Jake, has quite a record too. Bounced checks, credit fraud, 2 bankruptcies. 3 bankruptcies, I corrected. He filed again last month. There's no record of a recent bankruptcy. I showed him the eviction notice Gerald had thrown at me in the boutique. David studied it, then started laughing. What's funny? This is fake. The case number, the format, even the judge's name, all fabricated. There is no eviction. Your sister and Jake aren't losing their home. The room spun. They lied about needing housing. They lied about everything. He pulled up property records. Your parents' house, where they're living, it has a basement apartment, fully furnished, separate entrance. Been rented out until 2 months ago when the tenants moved out. 2 months ago, right when this all started. They could have moved Sarah's family there any time. This was never about needing your apartment. My phone had been buzzing constantly. More creditors, more threats. Each call, another piece of my life being systematically destroyed. What do? I asked, hearing the desperation in my own voice. First, we file police reports. Identity theft, fraud, harassment, stalking. Then we freeze your credit dispute, every false account. We'll need a forensic accountant to untangle the financial mess. I can't afford all that. You can't afford not to. But here's the thing, your family has assets. That house, your father's business. When we prove they did this, you can sue for damages. Sue my family. They're criminals, Annabelle. They just happen to share your DNA. Another text came through. This time, it was a selfie of Sarah standing outside my apartment door with a locksmith. The caption, "Fixing your mistake." I showed David. He immediately called someone. Get a unit to Riverside Apartments Building C. Attempted breaking and entering in progress. You have cops on speed dial. Benefits of being a former prosecutor. That photo is evidence of a crime in progress. She just convicted herself. As if on cue, my phone rang. Unknown number. Don't answer, David advised, but I was tired of running. Hello. You think you're so smart. Sarah's voice was shrill. The locksmith left, but I'm not done. You have 24 hours to give us the keys, or we'll destroy your credit so thoroughly you'll never recover. Too late. You already tried that. That was just the beginning. Wait until Mom's friends at the bank start processing those loan applications. Did you know she worked there for 15 years? Still has friends in high places. David was recording everything on his phone. He gave me a thumbs up to keep her talking. Why, Sarah, why are you doing this? Because you think you're better than us. Always have. Working your little jobs, saving your money, making us look bad. Do you know how embarrassing it is when people ask why my little sister has her life together while I'm stuck in Mom and Dad's basement? There it was, the truth finally spilling out. So you decided to destroy my life. I decided to take what should have been mine. I'm the oldest. I should have gotten the opportunities, the support. Instead, you got to play the responsible one while I got labeled the screw-up. Sarah, I worked for everything I have. And I'm going to take it all. The apartment, the jobs, the perfect little life you built, and when I'm done, you'll have nothing. Just like me. The line went dead. David stopped recording. That was illuminating, he said, and incredibly helpful for our case. She sounds unhinged. She sounds like someone who's been planning this for a very long time. He pulled out a business card. "This is a colleague who specializes in financial fraud recovery. Call her immediately." And this, another card, is a security specialist, former military. "Your family is escalating, and that concerns me." You think they'd physically hurt me? I think desperate people do desperate things, and your sister just confessed to a campaign of deliberate destruction. That's not normal sibling rivalry. As I left his office, my phone showed 97 missed calls, each one another piece of my financial life under attack. But I also had something I didn't have before: a plan to fight back. And apparently, Sarah had just given me the best weapon of all: her confession. Saturday morning arrived with an unsettling quiet. No calls from creditors, no texts with stalking photos, no family members creating scenes at my workplaces. The silence felt more ominous than the chaos. I'd spent Friday night at a hotel on David Chen's advice, paying cash and registering under a fake name like some kind of fugitive. The security specialist he'd recommended couldn't see me until Monday, so I was on my own for the weekend. My apartment complex parking lot looked normal when I arrived at 8 a.m. A few neighbors walking dogs, someone loading groceries, the maintenance guy trimming hedges. I'd been gone less than 48 hours, but it felt like returning from a war zone. The first sign something was wrong came at my door. The handle turned too easily, no resistance from the lock I'd secured Thursday night. My heart hammered as I pushed the door open. The violation hit me in waves. My furniture, what little I had, was rearranged. My couch pushed against the far wall, my coffee table in the kitchen, my bookshelf emptied belongings scattered across the floor. But nothing seemed stolen. On my refrigerator, held by magnets I didn't own, were children's drawings. Stick figures labeled "Our New Home" in Tommy's shaky handwriting. Mia's princesses taking up residence in Aunt Annie's castle. Ethan's robots defending our family house. They'd brought the children here, used them as props in their invasion. My bedroom was worse. Sarah's clothes hung in my closet. Jake's shoes lined up on my floor. Their toiletries occupied my bathroom like an invading army claiming territory. My own belongings were piled in the corner, dismissed as irrelevant. But it was the master bathroom that made me call the police immediately. Written on my mirror in Sarah's lipstick, "Home sweet home, get used to it." Officer Patricia Ruiz arrived within 20 minutes, took one look at the scene, and called for additional units. "This isn't just breaking and entering," she said. "This is stalking, intimidation, and criminal trespass." While she photographed everything, I discovered more violations. My important documents, birth certificate, Social Security card, tax returns, were missing from my filing cabinet. My laptop was gone along with my backup drives containing 5 years of financial records. "They took everything that proves my identity or financial history," I told Officer Ruiz. "Making it harder for you to fight the identity theft," she concluded. "These people know what they're doing." My phone rang. Sheila from the apartment office. "Annabelle, I'm reviewing security footage from last night. You need to see this." I met her in the office, Officer Ruiz accompanying me. The footage was damning. Thursday night, Sarah and my mother arriving with Jake and the children. Sarah producing a key, my spare, I'd hidden under a fake rock, which they'd somehow found. "That's not the worst part," Sheila said, fast-forwarding. Friday afternoon, my father arrived with 2 men in coveralls and a truck. They carried in boxes, furniture, what looked like an entire household worth of belongings. "They're moving in while you're gone," Officer Ruiz stated the obvious. But Sheila fast-forwarded again. "Watch this." Friday night, Sarah returned alone carrying my laptop bag. She spent an hour inside, then left with a box of what I now knew were my documents. And this morning, Sheila continued showing footage from 6 a.m. They came back. The timestamp showed 90 minutes ago. My entire family, parents, Sarah's family, even Uncle Robert entering my apartment with cleaning supplies and more boxes. "They're there right now," I gasped. Officer Ruiz called for backup. "We're going to catch them in the act." Within minutes, 4 patrol cars filled the parking lot. Neighbors emerged to watch the drama unfold. Officer Ruiz stationed units at both exits, then led the approach to my apartment. Through the door, we could hear voices. My mother saying something about paint colors, Sarah laughing about finally having space, the sound of furniture being moved. Officer Ruiz knocked. "Police, open the door." The voices inside went silent, then scrambling urgent whispers what sounded like people running. "Police, open up now." My father opened the door, trying for authoritative but achieving panicked. "Officers, there's been a misunderstanding. This is my daughter's apartment." "Which daughter?" Officer Ruiz asked, knowing the answer. "Both daughters. It's a family arrangement." I stepped into view. "No, it's not." Gerald's face cycled through emotions, surprise, anger, calculation. Behind him, I could see Sarah shoving something into a garbage bag. My mother stood frozen by my kitchen counter where she'd been unpacking dishes I didn't recognize. "Everyone out," Officer Ruiz commanded. "This is a crime scene." "Crime scene." Martha clutched her chest. "We're family." "Family doesn't break into each other's homes," another officer said, already photographing the scene. Jake emerged from my bedroom carrying Tommy, trying to use the child as a shield against consequences. "You're going to arrest us in front of the kids." "You committed crimes in front of the kids," Officer Ruiz countered. "Everyone outside, now." They filed out like scolded children, Sarah still clutching the garbage bag until an officer took it from her. Inside were my financial documents, my passport, even my high school diploma. She was trying to steal more documents. I told Officer Ruiz. Uncle Robert tried to slip away but was stopped. "I didn't know," he stammered. "They said Annabelle gave them permission." "Did you think she gave permission to steal her identity too?" Officer Ruiz asked. "We know about the credit fraud, the stalking, all of it." The children looked confused and scared. Despite everything, I felt sorry for them. They didn't ask to have criminals for parents. "What's happening?" Mia asked, tears starting. "Your parents made bad choices," I said gently. "This isn't your fault." Sarah's mask finally cracked completely. "You bitch! You're traumatizing my children." "You traumatize them by making them accomplices to your crimes," Officer Ruiz said. "Ma'am, you're under arrest for breaking and entering theft and criminal trespass." As they cuffed Sarah, she screamed obscenities that made the neighbors gasp. Jake tried to run but didn't get far. My parents weren't arrested but were warned they could be charged as accessories. "This is a family matter," Gerald shouted as police led Sarah away. "We don't involve outsiders in family matters." "You involved the police the moment you committed crimes," Officer Ruiz told him. She turned to me. "We'll need you to do a full inventory of what's missing and what they brought in." The apartment was a disaster. They'd been trying to establish residency mail forwarded to my address utilities, being switched to their names, even a fake lease agreement on my kitchen counter with forged signatures. In my bedroom closet, I found something that chilled me. A folder labeled Annabelle Contingency Plans. Inside were photos of me at various locations, detailed schedules of my movements, even notes about my coworkers and their vulnerabilities. One page was titled, Phase 2, If She Resists. The list included psychiatric hold documentation, power of attorney papers, conservatorship applications, life insurance policies with Sarah as beneficiary. They were planning to have me declared mentally incompetent, I told Officer Ruiz. "Or worse," she said grimly. "These life insurance policies were taken out recently. You can't take out policies on someone without their knowledge, which means more forgery. More conspiracy. This goes way beyond family drama. This is organized crime." My phone rang. David Chen. "Annabelle, I'm watching the news. Your apartment complex is on TV." I looked outside to see news vans arriving. Someone had called the media, probably a neighbor with a scanner and a desire for excitement. "Don't talk to reporters," David advised. "Let the police handle it, but this is good." "How is this good?" "Your family operated in shadows using shame and secrecy. Now it's public. They can't gaslight you if everyone sees the truth." As crime scene techs processed my apartment, I sat on the steps watching my carefully constructed life turned into evidence. But something had changed. For weeks, I'd been on the defensive reacting to their attacks. Now they were the ones being led away in handcuffs. Sheila approached with a locksmith. "We're changing all your locks, installing new security too. On the house, this happened on our watch." They had a key. "They won't anymore. We're also banning them from the property. They come back, they're trespassing." Small victories, but I'd take them. That evening, after hours of giving statements and cataloging crimes, I stood in my ransacked apartment. They'd tried to steal my home, my identity, my sanity. They'd almost succeeded. But almost wasn't enough. And now I had something they never expected: evidence of their conspiracy, public exposure of their crimes, and a growing team of people who believed me. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. I expected another threat, but instead found, "Annabelle, this is Emily, Sarah's daughter. I need to tell you something about what Mom's been planning. Can we talk?" The 12-year-old who'd been trained to lie for her mother wanted to talk. The tide wasn't just turning, it was becoming a tsunami. Monday morning found me in the law offices of Chen Waldman and Associates, surrounded by more legal firepower than I'd ever imagined needing. David Chen had assembled what he called the team: a financial crimes specialist, a family law expert, and Patricia Grayson, a former prosecutor who'd handled organized crime cases. "Your family ran a criminal enterprise," Patricia said, spreading out documents across the conference table. "This level of coordination, planning, and execution, I've seen mob families with less organization." The evidence was staggering. 43 fraudulent credit applications, 16 forged documents, 800 photos documenting stalking, bank records showing mysterious deposits into Sarah and Jake's accounts, corresponding to cash withdrawals from elderly relatives they'd helped with errands. "They've been running scams for years," the financial specialist Marcus Webb explained. "Your apartment situation just pushed them to target you directly." "But first," David interrupted, "we need to deal with immediate threats. Sarah made bail yesterday." My blood ran cold. "Already? Your parents put up their house. But here's the interesting part: the bail bondsman called me. Seems Gerald tried to use your name as a co-signer." "Of course he did." Patricia pulled out her phone. "Which brings us to this morning's developments. Emily, Sarah's daughter, has been texting you." I showed them the messages. Emily had sent detailed information about her mother's plans, including screenshots of Sarah's messages to someone named UV about making Annabelle disappear and permanent solutions. "We need to get those children into protective custody," the family law expert said. "They're witnesses to crimes and potentially in danger." "Can we trust a 12-year-old?" I asked. "Her information has been accurate so far," Patricia said. "She told you about the psychiatric hold plans, which we've confirmed. 3 different doctors received consultation requests about you last week, all traced back to your mother." The conference room door opened. David's assistant escorted in a woman I recognized but couldn't place. "This is Maria Gonzalez," David introduced. "She used to work with your mother at First National Bank." Maria looked nervous but determined. "Martha Hutchinson trained me 15 years ago. She was like a second mother. But what she's doing now, I had to come forward." She produced a flash drive. "Martha's been accessing the bank's systems using old employee credentials that were never deactivated. She's been pulling credit reports, creating false documentation, even attempting to transfer funds." "That's federal banking fraud," Patricia breathed. "That's serious prison time." "It gets worse," Maria continued. "She had me process a loan application last month, said it was for Annabelle, that you were too proud to ask for help. I thought I was doing something kind." "What kind of loan?" "Home equity on your apartment." "I don't own my apartment." "According to the documents Martha provided, you did. Forged deed, fake insurance, everything. If I hadn't gotten suspicious and double-checked, you stopped it and reported it. The FBI has been investigating for 2 weeks. They called me Friday after the arrests." The FBI. My family drama had attracted federal attention. Patricia's phone rang. She stepped out, returning with a grim expression. "We have a problem. Sarah's out on bail and she's already violating the restraining order. She's at your warehouse job with a news crew." "What?" David turned on the conference room TV, finding a local news channel. There was Sarah, looking polished and victim-like, standing outside the warehouse where I'd worked for 4 years. "Just want my sister to get the help she needs," she was saying. "Mental illness runs in our family, and Annabelle has always struggled. We're trying to stage an intervention, but she's become violent and delusional." "That lying." "Shh," Patricia said. "Let her hang herself." The reporter asked about the arrests. Sarah's expression turned martyred. "A misunderstanding. Annabelle called the police on her own family for trying to help her. She's convinced we're trying to steal from her when really we're just trying to ensure she's safe." She held up papers. "These are the psychiatric evaluations we've been begging her to submit to. 3 different doctors have expressed concern based on her recent behavior." "Those are the forged consultations," I said. Sarah continued. "We're especially worried because Annabelle has access to weapons through her warehouse job. Box cutters, industrial equipment. In her current state, she's trying to get me fired and committed." I realized. David was already on the phone with the warehouse. Patricia called her media contacts. The family law expert began drafting emergency motions. "We need to go on offense," Patricia announced. "They're controlling the narrative." Within an hour, we'd filed criminal complaints for harassment and restraining order violations, defamation lawsuits against Sarah and Gerald, emergency custody petitions for Sarah's children, FBI reports for the interstate financial crimes, bar complaints against fake lawyer Carl Morrison. "Now," Patricia said with a predatory smile, "we hold our own press conference." "I don't want to be on TV." "You don't have to be, but the truth needs to be." That afternoon, Patricia stood before cameras outside the courthouse. She didn't mention me by name, instead focusing on the broader pattern of elder abuse, identity theft, and financial exploitation the investigation had uncovered. "Multiple families have come forward." She announced, which was true. David's team had found 3 other victims of Sarah and Jake's scams. "This is not a family dispute. This is organized crime hiding behind blood relations." She displayed redacted versions of the forged documents, the stalking photos, the fraudulent credit applications. The story shifted from "woman refuses to help family" to "criminal family targets their own." My phone buzzed constantly. Co-workers expressing shock, friends offering support, even distant relatives choosing sides. Uncle Robert had flipped completely, providing evidence of family financial crimes going back a decade. "Your grandmother left you money," he told me during a recorded interview at David's office. $50,000. Your parents told you she didn't have anything right. I nodded, speechless. "They took it, said they'd invest it for you until you were ready. Sarah got a new car that year. Jake paid off gambling debts." "You knew." "I suspected, but Martha's my sister, and I'm sorry, Annabelle. I should have spoken up years ago." By evening, the battle lines were drawn. Team Annabelle consisted of a growing legal army co-workers who'd witnessed the harassment and relatives tired of enabling Sarah's crimes. Team Sarah had my parents, a few cousins still under their spell, and a dwindling pool of family friends who hadn't yet learned the truth. Then came the game changer. "Jake wants to make a deal," David announced during an emergency evening meeting. "His lawyer called. Jake will testify against Sarah and your parents in exchange for reduced charges." He's flipping on his wife. Apparently, Sarah's been planning to divorce him and pin everything on him anyway. He found the papers in her car. There was something poetic about criminals turning on each other. The family that schemes together apparently doesn't stay together. "What about the kids?" I asked. "Emergency custody hearing tomorrow. Emily's testimony via closed-circuit TV. The other 2 will have a guardian ad litem." "Will they be okay?" Patricia's expression softened. "You're worried about the children who were used as weapons against you. They're innocent, and Emily, she chose truth over her mother. That takes courage." "It's that kind of character that's going to win this," she said. "Judges see through manipulation. Juries appreciate genuine concern. Your family underestimated you." That night, I returned to my newly secured apartment. Triple lock security cameras, even a panic button connected directly to police dispatch. It felt like a fortress, but for the first time in weeks, I also felt safe. My phone rang. Emily calling from the foster home where she and her siblings were temporarily placed. "Aunt Annabelle, I'm scared." About testifying. About Mom. She always said blood is thicker than water. That family protects family no matter what. I thought about that phrase, how my parents had weaponized it. "You know what, Emily?" The full quote is, "The blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb." It means the family we choose can be stronger than the family we're born into. So it's okay that I'm telling the truth. It's brave and right, and I'm proud of you. After we hung up, I sat in my empty living room surrounded by legal documents and evidence of my family's crimes. Tomorrow would bring custody hearings, criminal proceedings, and more public revelations. But tonight, I had something I'd been missing: hope. The truth was finally louder than their lies, and sometimes that's all justice needs to find its voice. The courthouse steps were packed Tuesday morning. Word had spread through social media, local news, and the mysterious small-town network that ensures everyone knows everyone else's business. What had started as a family dispute had become the county's most watched drama. I arrived with David and Patricia flanking me like legal bodyguards. Camera crews jostled for position. Reporters shouted questions. Through the crowd, I spotted my family's contingent Gerald in his best suit, trying to look patriarchal. Martha clutching tissues she'd probably pre-dampened, and Sarah in a conservative dress that screamed, "Wrongly accused mother." "Don't engage," Patricia murmured. "Let them perform. We have facts." Inside, Judge Catherine Morrison, no relation to fake lawyer Carl, presided with the no-nonsense demeanor of someone who'd seen every family dysfunction imaginable. The courtroom was standing room, only neighbors, co-workers, church members, all here for the show. "This is a preliminary hearing regarding multiple interconnected cases," Judge Morrison began. "We have restraining order violations, custody matters, and criminal fraud charges. Let's start with the immediate safety concerns." Patricia stood. "Your Honor, we have video evidence of Sarah Hutchinson violating the restraining order within hours of its issuance. The courthouse's AV system displayed Sarah outside my warehouse performing for news cameras, then security footage from my apartment complex showing her trying to enter with her key after the locks were changed. Finally, a Ring doorbell video from my neighbor showing Sarah attempting to jimmy my window at 3 a.m. Sunday morning. "That's not me," Sarah blurted out. "Ms. Hutchinson." Judge Morrison's voice could freeze hell. "You'll have your chance to speak through counsel." Sarah's lawyer, a harried-looking public defender named Jeffrey Watts, looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. "Your Honor, my client maintains—" "Is that or is that not your client in these videos?" Judge Morrison cut him off. "It appears to be, Your Honor." "Then she's violated the restraining order 3 times in 4 days. Bailiff, please take Ms. Hutchinson into custody." "What?" Sarah shrieked, jumping up. "This is ridiculous. She's my sister. I have rights." As the bailiff approached, Sarah's carefully constructed image shattered. "You vindictive bitch!" she screamed at me. "I'll destroy you. You think this is over. I know where you work, where you sleep. "That's enough," Judge Morrison said as Sarah was handcuffed. "You've just threatened the plaintiff in open court. Bail is revoked." Martha wailed. Gerald stood face purple. "Your Honor, this is a family matter being blown out of proportion." "Sit down, Mr. Hutchinson, or you'll join your daughter." He sat. Patricia continued presenting evidence. The forged documents, the credit fraud, the stalking photos, each piece meticulously documented and verified. The courtroom grew quieter with each revelation, the audience realizing this wasn't typical family drama. Then came Emily's testimony via closed-circuit TV, Sarah's own daughter, 12 years old, describing years of training in how to lie still and manipulate. Mom said Aunt Annabelle was selfish for not sharing her money. Emily's voice was small but clear. She made us practice crying about being homeless, but we weren't homeless. Grandma and Grandpa have a big house with a whole apartment downstairs. Did your mother tell you to lie about other things? The child advocate asked. All the time. She said family means doing whatever it takes to get what we deserve. She had notebooks full of plans about Aunt Annabelle. Jeffrey Watts tried to object, but Judge Morrison overruled him. The damage was done. When Jake took the stand as a prosecution witness, the betrayal was complete. He detailed Sarah's schemes going back years, the elderly neighbor she'd befriended, and bilked the church fundraiser money that disappeared the co-worker whose identity she'd stolen. And the plan for Annabelle Patricia prompted. Jake glanced at Sarah, who was shooting daggers from the defendant's table. She called it the total life replacement. Take over the apartment, get Annabelle declared incompetent, become her guardian, control her assets. Her assets, Annabelle works 3 jobs to survive. Sarah was convinced Annabelle had hidden money, maybe inheritance, maybe savings. She couldn't accept that someone working that hard was just surviving. Gerald couldn't contain himself anymore. Lies, all lies. This man is a gambling addict trying to save himself. Judge Morrison's gavel cracked. Mr. Hutchinson, one more outburst and you're in contempt. I don't care. This is my family. My daughter is being railroaded. Bailiff. Watching my father hauled out in handcuffs should have felt satisfying. Instead, I felt hollow. This was what we'd become, a family destroying itself in public. Martha took the stand next, but her testimony backfired spectacularly. In trying to defend Sarah, she admitted to knowing about the credit applications, just helping with paperwork, the apartment break-ins, checking on family property, and the psychiatric evaluation plot, concerned about Annabelle's judgment. So you admit to participating in identity theft, breaking and entering, and fraud? Patricia clarified. That's not, we were helping. By lunch break, the prosecution had presented such overwhelming evidence that Jeffrey Watts approached Patricia for a plea deal. No deal for Sarah, Patricia said flatly. The parents, maybe, but your client is looking at 15 to 20 years. The afternoon brought character witnesses. My warehouse supervisor, Phil, testified about Gerald's attempts to get me fired. Brenda, from the boutique, described the stage scenes designed to destroy my reputation. Marcus, from the coffee shop, played security footage of Sarah photographing the employee schedule and cash register procedures. She was casing the joint, he said, like a professional thief, which I guess she is. The tide had turned so completely that cousins who'd supported my family that morning were approaching David during breaks, sharing their own stories of being scammed or manipulated. Then came the moment that broke everything open. Your Honor. Patricia announced, "We've just received word from the FBI. Martha Hutchinson was arrested 30 minutes ago on federal banking fraud charges. The investigation has uncovered over $200,000 in fraudulent transactions spanning 5 years." The courtroom erupted. Martha, in custody but visible on the courtroom video feed from the federal building, was sobbing hysterically. Not the practiced tears from before, real ugly crying of someone whose lifetime of crimes had finally caught up. Judge Morrison called for order. Based on the evidence presented, I'm issuing the following orders. The restraining order against Sarah Hutchinson is made permanent and extended to include all properties where the plaintiff works or resides. The minor children will remain in foster care pending a full custody evaluation. Sarah Hutchinson is remanded to custody pending trial on multiple felony charges. No, Sarah screamed. You can't take my babies. Annabelle, please tell them you lied. Tell them it was a misunderstanding. I stood up, something I hadn't planned. The courtroom went silent. Sarah, I said quietly. I worked 3 jobs for 5 years. I saved every penny. I ate ramen and wore shoes until they fell apart, all for a chance at stability. You tried to steal that. You used your own children as weapons. You turned our family into a criminal enterprise. And for what? Because you couldn't stand seeing me succeed through honest work. You always thought you were better than us, she snarled. No, I just thought I deserved the life I worked for, and now so does the judge. As Sarah was led away, still screaming threats and promises of revenge, I felt the weight of years lifting. The family that had tried to destroy me was destroying itself through its own crimes and greed. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed, but I'd prepared a statement with Patricia's help. Family should be a source of support, not sabotage. I read, I hope my story helps others trapped in toxic family situations realize that DNA doesn't give anyone the right to destroy your life. Thank you to everyone who stood by me and saw the truth. What's next for you? A reporter called out. Healing, I said, and living the life I've worked for. As we walked away from the courthouse, David's phone rang constantly. Other victims wanting to come forward, other families recognizing the patterns. What had started as one woman saying no to housing demands had exposed a network of family financial abuse that stretched back years. You know this isn't over, Patricia warned. There will be trials, appeals, probably more schemes. I know, but the hardest part is done. What's that? Everyone sees them now. The masks are off. The truth is out. They can't gaslight reality anymore. That evening, I sat in my apartment, my actual apartment, with its new locks and security system. Emily and her siblings were safe in foster care, with a family specially trained for situations like this. Jake was in protective custody, spilling every detail of Sarah's crimes in exchange for leniency. My parents were facing federal charges that could mean serious prison time. My phone rang. An unknown number, but I recognized the voice immediately. You've destroyed our family, Gerald said from federal lockup. I hope you're happy. I didn't destroy anything, Dad. I just refused to be destroyed. There's a difference. He hung up. It would be the last time we ever spoke. The war was over. I'd won. But victories in family battles never feel like celebrations. They feel like survival. And sometimes that's enough. Wednesday morning brought an avalanche of phone calls from extended family members who'd maintained careful neutrality during the courtroom drama. Suddenly, everyone had opinions, stories, and most surprisingly, apologies. Aunt Helen called first, her voice shaky with emotion. Annabelle, honey, I need to tell you something. Sarah borrowed $3,000 from me last year. Said it was for Mia's medical bills. Was Mia sick? That's just it. I saw her at the park the next week, perfectly healthy. When I asked Sarah, she said the crisis had passed thanks to my help. But now you're wondering if there ever was a crisis. Your cousin Jennifer just told me Sarah hit her up for $5,000 the same week, also for Mia's medical bills. The pattern was emerging. Sarah had been running the same scams on family members for years, just never targeting the same person twice, in close succession. Everyone had been too embarrassed or too loyal to compare notes. By noon, I'd fielded calls from 14 relatives. The tally was staggering, over $60,000 borrowed and never repaid, always for emergencies that seemed suspect in hindsight. Uncle Terry's favorite golf clubs pawned while he was on vacation. Cousin Patricia's identity used for a credit card that maxed out mysteriously. Great Aunt Mabel's Social Security checks accidentally deposited into Sarah's account for 6 months. We were all so stupid, Cousin Jennifer said during our call. She always had such believable stories. You weren't stupid. You were trusting family. There's a difference. David Chen had suggested I document everything, so I started a spreadsheet. By evening, it looked like a forensic accountant's nightmare. Sarah and Jake had been systematically pillaging the extended family for over a decade. Thursday brought Uncle Robert to my apartment with 2 banker's boxes of documents. He looked older than his 62 years, worn down by guilt and revelation. I've been keeping records, he said, hefting the boxes onto my kitchen table. Started about 5 years ago when things weren't adding up. Your father's business, your mother's banking connections, Sarah's constant emergencies. I knew something was wrong but couldn't piece it together. We spent hours going through his files. Photographs of family gatherings where jewelry later reported stolen was visible. bank statements showing suspicious transfers, even recordings Uncle Robert had started taping conversations after money started disappearing from the family reunion fund he managed. "Listen to this one," he said, playing a file from his phone. Sarah's voice from 2 years ago. "Robert, you know how banks make mistakes. That $10,000 probably just got misdirected. I'm sure it'll show up. No need to worry everyone about it." "The reunion account," Robert explained. 10 grand vanished. Sarah convinced me it was a banking error. Said her mom would look into it quietly. "What happened to the money?" "Jake's rehab, the one he never attended. I found out later they used it for a cruise to Jamaica." The deeper we dug, the worse it got. My grandmother's missing jewelry. Sarah had keys to her house for emergencies. The family cabin that mysteriously burned down Jake had increased the insurance just months before. Even small things, missing cash from birthday cards, borrowed items, never returned family heirlooms that vanished during moves Sarah generously helped with. "I should have spoken up," Robert said, head in his hands. "But Gerald's my brother-in-law, Martha's my sister. How do you accuse family?" "You don't until it's too late. That's what they counted on." My phone rang. Emily calling from her foster home. "Aunt Annabelle, Mrs. Patterson says you might want to know Mom had a storage unit. She kept talking about it when she thought we were asleep." "A storage unit?" She called it her insurance policy. Said even if everything went wrong, she had backup plans. I immediately called Patricia Grayson. Within hours, we had a warrant for any storage units in Sarah's name. The search revealed 3 units across 2 counties, all paid for in cash under variations of her name. Friday morning, I stood with law enforcement as they opened the first unit. It was like finding a criminal's trophy room. Boxes labeled with family members' names contained copied documents, social security cards, driver's licenses, bank statements. She had everyone's information systematically collected over years. "This is an identity theft kit," the FBI agent said, whistling. "She could have become any of you at any time." The second unit was worse items clearly stolen from family. Grandmother's jewelry, Uncle Robert's coin collection, even my childhood savings bonds, which my parents had told me were lost in a move. But the third unit made everyone stop cold. Journals, dozens of them dating back 15 years. Sarah's handwriting documenting every scam, every theft, every manipulation. Patricia flipped through one, her expression darkening. "She wrote about you specifically. Plans for your apartment going back 2 years. She knew you were saving, watched your progress, planned exactly when to strike." I read over her shoulder. My sister had documented my work schedules, my savings milestones, even my mental state. Notes like, "A looks tired working too hard might be vulnerable to guilt," and "A got promotion at warehouse, need to adjust timeline." "This is sociopathic," Patricia said. "She studied you like a mark, not a sister." Saturday's mail brought another shock. A letter from a law firm I didn't recognize informing me that I was named in Geraldine Hutchinson's will. My grandmother, who died 5 years ago. The grandmother whose estate my parents said was eaten up by medical bills. "She left you her house," the lawyer explained when I called. "Your parents contested the will, claimed undue influence, but couldn't prove it. They've been renting it out, supposedly waiting for values to increase before selling. They told me she died broke. Ma'am, your grandmother's estate was worth nearly $500,000. The house investments insurance policies. You were the primary beneficiary." Another lie, another theft, another betrayal. I called Uncle Robert. "Did you know about Grandma's will?" His silence was answer enough. I suspected. "She told me once that she was leaving everything to you. Said you were the only one who never asked her for money. And you said nothing. Would you have believed me? A 22-year-old working 3 jobs, would you have believed your parents were stealing your inheritance?" He was right. I wouldn't have. I'd have assumed there was a misunderstanding that family would never do such a thing. Sunday brought a family meeting I didn't organize but couldn't avoid. Cousins, aunts, uncles, everyone who'd been scammed gathered at Uncle Robert's house. The fury was palpable. "We're all filing police reports," Cousin Jennifer announced. "Every borrowed dollar, every stolen item." "And civil suits," Uncle Terry added. "I want my father's watch back, the one Sarah said was lost when she helped me move." The family that had once closed ranks around Sarah was now united in seeking justice. But Martha, out on federal bond, chose that moment to arrive. "How dare you all turn on us?" she said from the doorway, looking haggard in a way I'd never seen. "We're family." "You stole from family," Aunt Helen shot back. "For years. We borrowed during hard times. Everyone has hard times." "You stole my mother's wedding ring," Jennifer screamed. "Said it was lost at the dry cleaners." The room erupted. Years of suppressed suspicions and polite silence shattered as everyone shared their stories. Martha tried defending, deflecting, denying, but the evidence was overwhelming. "Annabelle poisoned you all against us," she finally said, desperately seeking a scapegoat. "Annabelle opened our eyes," Robert corrected. "She showed us it's possible to stand up to family bullies." Martha turned to me, tears streaming. "I'm your mother. Doesn't that mean anything?" "It meant everything," I said quietly. "That's why it took me so long to see the truth. You counted on that love to blind me. But love isn't supposed to be a weapon." She left without another word. It would be the last time I'd see her outside a courtroom. That evening, Emily called again. "Aunt Annabelle, I've been thinking. When this is over, when Mom goes away, could we maybe still talk sometimes?" "Of course, sweetheart, always." "I don't want to be like her. I want to be like you, working hard for what I have, being honest." "You already are, Emily. You chose truth over comfortable lies. That's the hardest thing in the world." After we hung up, I sat in my apartment surrounded by evidence of my family's crimes. Bank statements, police reports, storage unit inventories, paper proof of years of deception. But also on my table messages of support from the family members who'd chosen justice over enablement. Job recommendations from employers who'd witnessed the harassment and stood by me. Cards from neighbors appalled by what they'd learned. The family I was born into had tried to destroy me. But from their ashes, a different kind of family was emerging. One built on truth, respect, and the radical idea that love shouldn't cost everything you have. Monday morning arrived with Martha standing outside my apartment building in the rain, no umbrella, looking like a ghost of the mother I once knew. She'd been there since dawn, according to my neighbor, just waiting. The federal ankle monitor bulged under her rain-soaked pants. I watched her from my window debating. David had advised no contact, Patricia had insisted on it. But something in her posture, defeated, diminished, made me grab my keys. "You have 5 minutes," I said, not inviting her in. I need to tell you something." Her voice was hoarse, aged a decade in 2 weeks. "About Sarah." "I know all about Sarah's crimes, Mom. I have her journals." "No, not that." She pulled out an envelope, hands shaking. "Can we please go inside? I know I don't deserve it, but please." Against every instinct, I led her to my apartment. She stood just inside the door, dripping on my mat, taking in the space she'd tried to steal. "It's nice," she whispered. "You did good, Annabelle. 4 minutes." She opened the envelope with trembling fingers, pulling out a DNA test. "Sarah isn't Gerald's daughter." The words hung between us like a bomb. "What?" "I had an affair 29 years ago with Marcus Wellington from church." She laughed bitterly. "The church where we tried to shame you, he was there that night." I sank onto my couch, mind reeling. Does Sarah know? No. But Gerald found out when Sarah was 10. I came home early one day and heard him screaming at her about being worthless, not his real daughter. He was drunk. He's known for 19 years. He said he'd forgiven me, said we'd raise her as his own, but he never let me forget. Every time Sarah disappointed him, every time she got in trouble, he'd look at me and say, "Bad blood will tell." "So you overcompensated." Martha nodded, tears flowing freely now. "Everything Sarah wanted, I gave. Every excuse I made. Every crime I covered. I thought if I loved her enough, protected her enough, she'd become worthy of the family name. Instead, I created a monster. You both did. Dad with his coldness, you with your enabling. I know. She pulled out another document. This is my confession, everything. The bank fraud, the identity theft, how we stole your inheritance, all of it. I've already given a copy to the FBI. I stared at the papers. Why now? Because Saturday night, Gerald came to the hotel where I'm staying on bond. He had a plan. Said if we testified that you'd been unstable for years, that you'd given us permission for everything, then forgot due to mental illness, we might get reduced sentences. Let me guess he had a doctor ready to testify. 3 doctors, all paid off with your inheritance money. She met my eyes for the first time. He showed me committal papers, Annabelle. He was going to have you institutionalized. Said once you were declared incompetent, we'd control everything. Your inheritance, your earnings, your life. My blood ran cold. Even now, even facing federal prison, they were planning my destruction. But the worst part, Martha continued, was when he talked about Sarah's children. Said foster care was making them soft. That once we got custody back, he'd toughen them up, like he tried with Sarah after learning the truth. He abused her. Emotionally, psychologically. And I let him because I felt guilty. Every cruel word he said to her I tried to balance with gifts, excuses, cover-ups. I turned her into what she is to apologize for my sin. She sat down heavily on my floor, apparently forgetting about chairs. Saturday night, I realized something. I've been living in fear for 19 years. Fear of Gerald leaving. Fear of the truth coming out. Fear of losing face at church. And that fear poisoned everything it touched. Why are you telling me this? Because you're not afraid. You lost everything, family, reputation, almost your home, and you didn't break. You stood in truth even when lies would have been easier. She looked up at me. I want to do that. Once. Before it's too late. So you're going to testify against Dad. Against everyone. Including myself. I've done terrible things, Annabelle. Unforgivable things. But I won't let Gerald destroy those children like he destroyed Sarah. And I won't let him destroy you. She stood with effort, looking older than her 58 years. There's more in that envelope. Account numbers for money hidden from the FBI. Location of items stolen from family. Everything I could remember. This could add years to your sentence. I'm already looking at 20 years. What's 40 when you've wasted the first 60? She moved toward the door, then stopped. Your grandmother knew you know. About Sarah. She never said, but she knew. That's why she left everything to you. Said you were the only honest Hutchinson in 3 generations. 4 now. Emily chose truth too. Martha smiled sadly. Maybe there's hope after all. She reached for the door handle, then turned back. I know I have no right to ask, but could you look after Sarah's kids? Not financially, I know we've taken enough, but just let them know they're not their parents. They can choose different. I already told Emily that. Tell them all, please, break the cycle. After she left, I called Patricia immediately. My mother just confessed to everything. Martha, the enabler-in-chief. I sent photos of the documents. Patricia's whistle was low and impressed. This changes everything. With her cooperation, we're looking at RICO charges. This is organized crime-level stuff, Annabelle. She knows. Is she trying to cut a deal? No, she's trying to cut the cycle. That afternoon, the FBI raided 3 locations based on Martha's information. They found $100,000 in hidden accounts, stolen property worth twice that, and evidence of crimes going back 20 years. Gerald's legitimate business was a front for money laundering, family theft. Tuesday morning, Gerald was arrested at his office. The news footage showed him being led out in handcuffs, screaming about betrayal and family loyalty. His last words before they put him in the car, "Martha will pay for this." But Martha was already paying. That evening, she stood before Judge Morrison and pled guilty to every charge. No deals, no negotiations. just truth. Your Honor, she said, reading from a prepared statement. I spent 20 years choosing fear over truth, crime over consequences. I taught my daughter that family means covering sins instead of confronting them. I destroyed my younger daughter's life trying to protect the older one from her father's cruelty. I am guilty of every charge and ready for whatever sentence you deem just. Judge Morrison, who'd seen every manipulation in the book, actually looked surprised. Mrs. Hutchinson, you understand you're facing 40 years. Yes, Your Honor. You could have negotiated. No, Your Honor. My family negotiated with truth for too long. It's time someone just told it. Sarah, watching from the defendant's table, exploded. You traitorous bitch. You're supposed to protect me. I'm your daughter. I did protect you, Martha said quietly. I protected you from consequences, from growth, from becoming a decent person. That's not love, Sarah. That's destruction with a smile. The courtroom was silent. Even hardened court reporters looked moved. You'll die in prison, Sarah screamed. Is that what you want, to die alone? I'd rather die honest than live in lies, Martha replied. Something Annabelle taught me. Too late for me, but maybe not for you. Sarah lunged at her mother, but was restrained. As they dragged her out, she screamed threats and obscenities that would add years to her sentence. That night, Emily called. Is it true what they're saying about Grandma? What are they saying? That she told the truth about everything, that she's going to prison forever because she wouldn't lie anymore. Yes, that's true. Why would she do that? I thought carefully. Sometimes, Emily, people realize they've been living wrong, and even if they can't undo the past, they can at least stop the future from being poisoned too. Your grandmother made terrible choices, but today she made one good one. Do you forgive her? The question I'd been avoiding. I don't know. Maybe someday. But I respect her courage today, even if I can't forget her cowardice yesterday. Wednesday brought Gerald's response. Without Martha's support, his defense crumbled. Jake had already flipped. Sarah was scrambling for anyone to blame. And Gerald, the patriarch who'd ruled through fear, found himself alone. He took a deal. 15 years forfeiting all assets to pay restitution to victims. The family home would be sold, the business liquidated, everything built on lies would be dismantled. He could have gotten 5 if he'd shown remorse, Patricia told me. But he spent the entire negotiation insisting you all owed him obedience. The prosecutor actually added years because he wouldn't shut up about ungrateful family. That evening, I visited Martha one last time before her transfer to federal prison. She looked peaceful in a way I'd never seen. I know you can't forgive me, she said through the glass. I don't forgive myself. But Annabelle, I need you to know you saved us. I didn't save anyone. Sarah's going to prison. Dad's going to prison. You're going to prison. You saved Emily and her siblings from becoming the next generation of criminals. You saved the family from continuing this poison. And you saved me from dying as the coward I've been living as. She pressed her hand against the glass. You showed me it's never too late to choose truth, even if the truth costs everything. I didn't press my hand against hers. Couldn't. But I nodded. Take care of yourself, Mom. You too, sweetheart. Live the life you've earned. And when you think of me, if you ever do, remember this moment. Not the 20 years of lies, but the one day I finally told the truth. I left the detention center with mixed emotions, anger at what she'd done, grief for what we'd lost, but also, surprisingly, a tiny seed of pride. In her final act as my mother, she'd chosen honesty over easy lies. It was more than I'd ever expected, and somehow, almost enough. Thursday morning shattered Gerald Hutchinson's carefully constructed image with the efficiency of a sledgehammer. The morning news led with footage of federal agents raiding his business, carrying out boxes of financial records, while employees stood in shocked clusters. The man who'd built his reputation on being a pillar of the community was revealed as a cornerstone of criminality. Hutchinson Construction Built on Lies read the local paper's headline accompanied by a photo of Gerald being led away in handcuffs, his face twisted in rage. Patricia called me early. Your father's attorney wants to meet. Gerald has a proposition. I don't want to hear it. You should. It's remarkably stupid and you'll want to know what he's planning. That afternoon, I sat across from Lawrence Blackwood Gerald's high-priced attorney, who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Patricia flanked me taking notes. My client is willing to drop all claims against Annabelle's inheritance if she agrees to testify that Martha manipulated him into these crimes, Blackwood said, sliding a document across the table. Patricia laughed. Your client is facing RICO charges and he wants his daughter to perjure herself. My client maintains his innocence. He suggests that Martha, driven by guilt over her indiscretion, orchestrated everything to frame him. The same Martha who confessed and implicated herself, I asked, the one taking 40 years rather than lie. Blackwood shifted uncomfortably. My client believes she's having a mental breakdown. He has doctors who will testify. The same doctors he was going to use to have me committed, I interrupted. The ones he paid with stolen money. That's allegedly stolen money. Patricia pulled out a tablet. Would you like to see the receipts? We have 20 years of financial records showing your client systematically embezzling from family members his own business and various elderly clients who trusted him with construction projects. She swiped through document after document, inflated invoices, double billing, projects paid for but never completed, materials purchased for one job and used on another. The theft wasn't just from family. Gerald had been defrauding customers for decades. Furthermore, Patricia continued, we have 17 former employees ready to testify about being forced to participate in fraud or face termination. Your client ran his business like a mob front. Blackwood's composure cracked. What does your client want? Justice, I said simply, and for him to stop trying to manipulate his way out of consequences. That evening, Gerald's world continued its collapse. The church board released a statement removing him from all positions, expressing shock at the revelations. The country club revoked his membership. The Chamber of Commerce scrubbed his name from their website so fast it probably left digital skid marks. But Friday brought the real devastation to Gerald's ego. Former employees started coming forward publicly. Marcus Webb, who'd worked for Gerald for 10 years, gave an interview to the local news. He made us bill clients for premium materials, then use cheap substitutes, Marcus revealed. If we complained, he'd threaten our families, said he knew people who could make problems for us. Another employee, Jennifer Torres, shared how Gerald had forced her to forge inspection certificates. He said it was standard practice, that everyone did it. When I refused, he fired me and blackballed me with every construction company in the state. By noon, 3 news vans were parked outside the detention center where Gerald was being held. His bond had been revoked after Martha's testimony revealed he'd been planning to flee to the Cayman Islands, where he'd apparently been hiding money for years. I was at work back at all 3 jobs after being cleared of any wrongdoing when Phil found me in the warehouse. You need to see this. He led me to the break room where the news was playing. Gerald was being transferred to federal court and someone had alerted the media. The crowd outside wasn't just reporters, it was victims. Elderly clients he'd defrauded. Former employees he'd threatened. Even Pastor Williams was there looking shell-shocked as he learned the extent of his former board members' crimes. Gerald emerged from the transport van like he was still the respected businessman, head high, shoulders back. Then he saw the crowd. For the first time in my life, I watched my father look afraid. Mr. Hutchinson, how do you respond to allegations you stole over $500,000 from family members? A reporter shouted. Do you admit to defrauding elderly clients? Another called. How many construction projects did you never complete? Gerald tried to maintain his composure, but his former clients started shouting specifics. You stole my mother's retirement. My house still leaks from your shoddy work. His mask cracked. Liars, he bellowed. All of you jealous liars trying to destroy a successful man. That's when 83-year-old Mrs. Chen, whose bathroom renovation Gerald had botched, then overcharged for, hit him with her cane. Not hard enough to injure, just enough to make a point. The photo of that tiny woman confronting the man who'd stolen thousands from her went viral within hours. Saturday morning, Gerald's attorney called Patricia again. He wants to see Annabelle in person. He says he has information about hidden assets. More manipulation, Patricia warned. But I was curious. What did a man who'd lost everything have left to say? The Federal Detention Center visiting room was sterile and cold. Gerald sat behind reinforced glass orange jumpsuit, replacing his expensive suits, but still trying to project authority. Annabelle. He said my name like it tasted bitter. Gerald. Two could play that game. His jaw tightened. Even now, respect was beyond him. I suppose you're happy, destroying your family. I didn't destroy anything. I just stopped letting you destroy me. Your mother betrayed me. 20 years of lying about Sarah, then she turns on me the moment things get difficult. Things got difficult because you committed crimes for decades. He leaned forward, eyes blazing with the old fury. Everything I did was for this family, to build something, to have a legacy. Built on theft and lies. Built on opportunity. That's how the world works, Annabelle. The strong take from the weak. The smart outmaneuver the stupid. I tried to teach you that, but you were always too soft, like your grandmother. The grandmother whose money you stole, his smile was cruel. She was going to waste it on you. A girl who couldn't even appreciate what family means. I put that money to better use. Sarah's shopping sprees and Jake's gambling debts. Family investments. Is that what you're calling fraud now? His fist slammed the counter. The guard stepped forward, warning him. Gerald took a breath, visibly trying to regain control. I have $2 million hidden offshore, he said quietly. Switzerland Caymans, accounts your mother doesn't know about. I'll give you the information for one thing. Here it came, the last manipulation. You testify that I was a good father, that this was all Martha's influence, that I tried to hold the family together but was betrayed. I stared at him, this man who'd raised me, and felt nothing. No anger, no pity, just emptiness where love should have been. You want me to lie in court under oath. I want you to tell a different truth. Was I not a provider? Did I not keep a roof over your head? Food on the table? You did, with stolen money and fraudulent business practices. Details, he waved dismissively. Every successful man cuts corners. Every criminal justifies their crimes. His face purpled. I am your father. No, you're my biological parent. Fathers protect their children. You tried to have me institutionalized. For your own good, you were being selfish, refusing to help family. I was being independent, working honestly for what I had, and that threatened you so much you tried to destroy my life. I stood up. Keep your offshore millions. I'd rather earn minimum wage honestly than inherit a fortune built on lies. You'll regret this. When you're old and alone, you'll regret choosing strangers over blood. I'm choosing integrity over crime. If that leaves me alone, so be it. You're just like your grandmother, he spat, self-righteous, judgmental, thinking you're better than everyone. I'm not better than everyone. I'm just better than this. I gestured between us. Better than theft and fraud and manipulation disguised as love. Get out, he snarled. And know this, I'll die before I apologize for trying to keep this family strong. Then you'll die unrepentant. Your choice. I walked out as he raged behind the glass threats and curses following me down the corridor. The guard at the exit shook his head. Family visits are usually rough, but that was something else. That wasn't a family visit. That was saying goodbye to a stranger who happened to raise me. Sunday's news brought the final blow to Gerald's ego. The FBI had frozen the offshore accounts he'd bragged about. Turns out Martha had known about them all along and included them in her confession. Even his last bargaining chip was worthless. His business was formally dissolved. The family home listed for sale, every asset liquidated to pay restitution. The empire Gerald had built through crime was being methodically dismantled. Church that morning was surreal. I'd started attending a different congregation, one where nobody knew my story. But Pastor Williams called asking me to come to Living Grace one last time. "We want to apologize," he said, publicly. "The congregation was used as a weapon against you, and that's not what faith should be." I sat in the back as Pastor Williams delivered a sermon about wolves in sheep's clothing, about how evil can wear a familiar face. He never mentioned names, but everyone knew. The collection that Sunday went to a fund for fraud victims. Small comfort, but something. Monday morning brought news that Gerald had been sentenced to 25 years. He'd rejected every plea deal insisted on a trial and been found guilty on all counts. The judge, reading victim impact statements, had added years for lack of remorse. Emily called that evening. "Is Grandpa really going to jail forever?" "For a very long time, yes." "Mom says it's your fault, that if you'd just shared your apartment, none of this would have happened." "What do you think?" She was quiet for a moment. I think sometimes people show you who they really are, and Grandpa showed us he's someone who hurts people for money. That's not your fault. You're very wise for 12. I had to grow up fast. Mom made sure of that." She paused. "Aunt Annabelle. The family that fostered us wants to adopt us, all 3 of us. Should we say yes? What does your heart tell you? That family isn't just about blood. It's about who takes care of you, who teaches you right from wrong, who loves you without price tags." Then you have your answer. After we hung up, I sat in my apartment, my safe, secure, honestly earned apartment, and reflected on the wreckage. My father in federal prison, my mother facing 40 years, my sister awaiting trial. The family I'd grown up in was effectively gone. But in its place, Emily and her siblings finding real family. Cousins reconnecting over shared trauma and determination to do better. Co-workers who'd become friends. Neighbors who'd stood by me. Gerald was right about one thing: I would never have the family I was born into. But he was wrong about being alone. I was surrounded by chosen family, by people who loved without manipulation, supported without price tags, and valued truth over blood. As the sun set on another Monday, I realized something profound. Gerald's downfall wasn't just about justice for his crimes. It was about breaking the cycle he'd perpetuated that might makes right, that family means compliance, that love is leverage. His empire of lies had fallen, and from its ashes something honest could finally grow. 6 months had passed since the trials ended. Summer was yielding to fall, and with it came a sense of renewal I hadn't expected. My apartment, once a symbol of independence fought for, had become something more, a sanctuary where broken people learned to heal. Tuesday evenings had evolved into an informal support group. It started with just Jennifer from work, whose ex-husband had drained her savings through similar manipulations. Then Marcus from the warehouse joined, sharing his own story of a brother who'd stolen his identity. Word spread quietly, and now 12 of us gathered weekly in my living room, united by a common thread: family members who'd seen our love as weakness to exploit. "The thing is," Jennifer was saying, passing around her homemade cookies, "I kept thinking I was alone, that I was the only idiot who fell for family fraud." "Same," Marcus agreed. "The shame kept me silent for years. My brother bought 3 cars in my name. I'm still paying them off." "But shame is their weapon," I added, refilling coffee cups. "They count on us being too embarrassed to compare notes to press charges to say no." The doorbell interrupted our discussion. Emily stood there with her younger siblings, their foster mom, soon-to-be adoptive mom, Patricia, waiting in the car. It was our monthly dinner, something Emily had requested to maintain connection. "Aunt Annie." Tommy, now 5, barreled into my legs. The trauma counselor said he was making remarkable progress, no longer performing sadness on command. "Hey buddy, pizza's on the way." Mia, 9, and increasingly confident, held up a report card. "Look, all A's and B's, Mrs. Patterson says I'm not behind anymore." That's amazing, sweetheart. Emily, now 13 and wise beyond her years, helped her siblings settle in before pulling me aside. I testified in Mom's sentencing today. My heart clenched. How did it go? I told the truth. About the training, the lies, the stealing. Mom screamed that I was a traitor. Emily's eyes, so like Sarah's, but holding none of the coldness, stayed steady. But the prosecutor said my testimony helped the judge understand the full impact. 22 years. 22 years. Sarah wouldn't see freedom until her children were adults. Are you okay? I'm sad, Emily admitted, but also relieved. Is that wrong? No, honey, it's honest, and honesty is never wrong. The support group welcomed the kids with the easy warmth of people who understood complicated families. While my living room filled with chatter and laughter, I noticed how much had changed. 6 months ago, I was eating ramen alone, terrified of losing everything. Now my apartment hosted healing hope and really good pizza. Wednesday brought professional victories. Brenda called with news that still made me giddy. The district manager position. It's yours if you want it. District manager. But that's a promotion you've earned. You've shown grace under pressure integrity when it would have been easier to crumble. Corporate was impressed by how you handled everything. I don't know what to say. Say yes. Also, the salary means you can finally quit those other jobs. One job, regular hours, actual benefits. After 5 years of grinding myself down across 3 positions, I could barely imagine it. I gave notice at the warehouse and coffee shop that afternoon. Phil and Marcus threw impromptu parties, both insisting I'd always have a place if I needed it. The safety net of good people, something Gerald never understood the value of. Thursday's mail brought an unexpected gift. A letter from Great Aunt Mabel's attorney. She'd passed peacefully in her sleep 2 weeks prior, something the family drama had obscured, but she'd left me something in her will. She changed it after the trials, the lawyer explained over the phone, said you were the only one with backbone enough to deserve it. It turned out to be her vintage jewelry collection, the pieces Sarah hadn't managed to steal, worth approximately $30,000. Not a fortune, but enough to establish real financial security for the first time in my life. She also left you this letter, the lawyer added, said to read it when you were ready. The letter, written in Mabel's shaky handwriting, was brief but powerful. Dear Annabelle, I spent 87 years watching this family cannibalize itself with greed and lies. I stayed silent, chose comfortable complicity over difficult truth. You did what I never had the courage to do. You said no. You stood alone against the mob and emerged victorious. These jewels are my grandmother's, passed down through generations. They deserve to go to someone who understands that real inheritance isn't about money. It's about values. Live well, child. You've earned it. Aunt Mabel. Friday morning, I met with Patricia Grayson one last time to sign the final paperwork. All the criminal cases were resolved. Sarah in federal prison, Gerald serving 25 years, Martha 4 years into her 40-year sentence, Jake in minimum security cooperating fully and attending mandatory gambling addiction treatment. The restitution checks will start coming next month, Patricia informed me. Between the liquidated assets and the FBI's recovery of stolen funds, you'll receive approximately $200,000 over the next 5 years. I stared at the number. I don't want money built on crime. It's your money, your inheritance, your grandmother's estate, even portions of your own earnings they stole through identity fraud. This isn't profiting from crime, it's recovering what was always yours. What about the other victims? Everyone's being made whole as much as possible. Your father's business assets alone are covering most of it. The house sale will handle the rest. The family home where I'd grown up, where Sunday dinners turned into ambushes and love came with price tags, would soon belong to strangers. Good riddance. Saturday arrived with something I'd never experienced: a completely free weekend. No rushing between jobs, no double shifts, no exhaustion so deep it felt like drowning. I did something radical. I slept until 8 a.m. My phone rang as I made breakfast. An unknown number, but I answered anyway. Annabelle. The voice was familiar but softer. It's Robert, Uncle Robert. Hi, cautious but listening. I wanted to. I'm having a family dinner tomorrow. The good family cousins who've woken up aunts who've apologized. We'd like you to come. I don't know if I'm ready for family dinners again. I understand, but we're trying to build something new, something honest. Jennifer's bringing her kids. Terry's coming with his partner. He hid for years because Gerald was homophobic. We're done with secrets and manipulation. Just real family, the kind we should have always been. I thought about trust, how it grows back slowly after being clear-cut. Can I think about it? Of course. You've earned the right to be cautious with us. That evening, the support group met again. I shared Uncle Robert's invitation, the uncertainty it stirred. Trust but verify, Marcus suggested. Go but drive yourself. Leave if it feels wrong. Or don't go, Jennifer countered. You don't owe them anything just because they've finally seen the light. Both valid perspectives, but Emily, wise beyond her years, offered the clarity I needed. What do you want, Aunt Annie? Not what they want. Not what you think you should do. What do you want? What did I want? Connection, but on my terms. Family, but not at any cost. Love that didn't come with strings attached. I want to try, I admitted, but carefully. Sunday dinner at Uncle Robert's was awkward at first. People who'd stood by while I was attacked now offering apologies and explanations. But gradually, something shifted. Stories emerged, Patricia's husband leaving her because she wouldn't participate in Sarah's schemes. Jennifer's struggle to rebuild credit after trusting family with her information. Terry's years of hiding his true self to avoid Gerald's judgment. We weren't the Hutchinsons anymore, not really. We were survivors of the Hutchinsons comparing scars and building something new. I propose a toast, Robert said, raising his glass of lemonade, to Annabelle for showing us it's possible to choose truth over comfort, for breaking the cycle we all perpetuated. To second chances, Jennifer added. To honest families, Terry included. To boundaries. I finished and everyone laughed, but it was warm laughter, understanding laughter. As the evening wound down, I helped Robert clear dishes. Thank you for coming, he said quietly. I know we don't deserve forgiveness. This isn't about forgiveness. Not yet. Maybe not ever for some things. This is about moving forward. Fair enough. Can we do this again next month? We'll see. Driving home through streets painted gold by autumn sunset, I reflected on the journey. From that first no to housing demands, through criminal trials and family destruction, to this tentative rebuilding. My phone buzzed at a red light. A text from Emily. Today was good. Real family is better than fake family, even if it's smaller. She was right. The family I'd lost had been built on lies, manipulation, and conditional love. What remained, what was slowly growing, was smaller but genuine. A cousin who checked in weekly, an uncle learning to stand up after decades of enabling, nieces and nephews choosing truth over tribal loyalty. And beyond blood, Brenda mentoring me through the promotion, the support group that had become chosen family, neighbors who'd testified on my behalf, the network of people who'd seen me at my lowest and offered hands up, not hands out. Monday morning, I started my new position as district manager. The nameplate on my desk felt surreal. The salary meant I could start saving again, this time for a house, for travel, for a life beyond mere survival. But first, one more task. I drove to the federal prison where Martha was serving her sentence. She'd added me to her visitor list months ago, but I hadn't been ready. Now maybe I was. She looked smaller in person, gray overtaking the carefully dyed hair she'd once maintained, but her eyes were clear in a way they'd never been when she was free. Annabelle, you came. I'm not here to forgive you, I said, immediately needing boundaries even now. I know, I'm just grateful to see you. She studied my face. You look good, healthy, happy. Getting there. I heard about the promotion and the support group. Robert writes me, Sometimes tells me how you're helping others. People need to know they're not alone. That family fraud isn't their fault. No, it's the fault of people like me, who chose crime over courage. She folded her hands carefully. I'm in therapy here. Real therapy, not the manipulation tactics I used to call help. Learning about why I made the choices I did. And fear mostly, and greed disguised as love. I told myself I was protecting Sarah, providing for family, but really I was feeding my own need for control. She met my eyes. I'm sorry, Annabelle. Not the manipulative sorry that comes with expectations. Just sorry. For all of it. I nodded, not trusting my voice. How are Emily and the children? Thriving. Their new family is wonderful. They're in therapy too, learning to recognize manipulation tactics so they never fall victim again or become perpetrators. Martha's voice was heavy. That's my biggest fear, that I poisoned them too. Emily's strong. She chose truth when lies would have been easier. That's not poison, that's courage. Like you. Like Grandma, she saw through it all, didn't she? Martha smiled sadly. Your grandmother was the only person I could never fool. She knew about Sarah, about the stealing, probably about the affair. But she loved us anyway, just from a distance. With boundaries. Smart woman. The smartest. She'd be proud of you. The visit timer buzzed. As I stood to leave, Martha spoke quickly. I know I have no right to ask, but could you write sometimes, not about forgiveness or family, just life, normal things, what the world's like now. I considered it. Letters weren't visits. Words on paper couldn't manipulate as easily as tears in person. Maybe I'll think about it. That's more than I deserve, thank you. Walking back through the prison gates to freedom my freedom earned. Honestly, I felt something release in my chest. Not forgiveness, not yet. But perhaps the beginning of letting go. That evening, I drafted my first letter to Martha. Nothing deep, just descriptions of the changing leaves, the new job, how Tommy had lost his first tooth. Normal things like she'd asked. Human connection without the hooks of manipulation. Maybe that's what Phoenix Rising really meant. Not just surviving the fire that destroyed your old life, but choosing which ashes to scatter and which to transform into something new. Building carefully, consciously, with full knowledge of how quickly trust can burn. My family had tried to destroy me with their greed. Instead, they'd forged me into someone stronger, someone who could spot manipulation from a distance and choose truth even when it hurt. Someone who could help others escape their own toxic families. The Hutchinson crime family was gone, scattered across federal prisons and fractured relationships. But from their ashes, something better was growing. A network of survivors and truth-tellers of chosen family and earned trust. Phoenix risen. Phoenix rising. Every day a choice to build instead of burn. October arrived with a call that shook my carefully rebuilt world. The number was familiar from years of childhood memories, but I hadn't heard from her since the trials began. Lisa Chen, Sarah's best friend from high school, the maid of honor at her wedding to Jake. Annabelle, please don't hang up. I have something you need to know. I almost ended the call immediately. Lisa had been Sarah's co-conspirator in countless teenage schemes, from cheating on tests to shoplifting lipstick they could afford. But something in her voice, fear mixed with determination, kept me listening. I'm listening, I said carefully. Can we meet in public? I have documents, evidence, about Sarah and Jake, things even you don't know. Against every instinct, I agreed to meet her at a coffee shop downtown, not the one where I used to work, but a neutral location with plenty of witnesses. Patricia Grayson insisted on accompanying me, her protective presence reassuring. Lisa looked different from the party girl who'd helped Sarah terrorize our high school. Gone were the designer clothes and perfect makeup, replaced by exhaustion and what looked like genuine remorse. A file box sat on the table between us. Before you say anything, she began, hands trembling slightly. I know I was horrible to you growing up. I enabled Sarah, participated in her schemes, laughed when she made your life hell. I'm not here for forgiveness." "Then why are you here?" She pushed the box toward me. "Because Sarah and Jake destroyed my life too, and I have proof of crimes you don't even know about." Patricia opened the box, whistling low at the contents. Bank statements, photographs, emails, even recorded conversations. Lisa had been documenting Sarah's crimes for 3 years. It started when they borrowed $50,000 for Jake's Sure Thing investment, Lisa explained. "I refinanced my house to help them. They promised to pay it back in 6 months. Let me guess the investment was gambling. Worse, it was a scam they were running. They used my money to set up a fake charity for underprivileged kids, collected donations for 2 years, kept everything." Patricia's expression darkened. "That's federal wire fraud, and using children as bait. Judges hate that." Lisa pulled out photographs. Sarah at charity events surrounded by actors she'd hired to play grateful parents. Jake with a fake oversized check promising to build a playground that never materialized. Professional quality fraud that must have taken months to plan. "Why didn't you go to the police?" "Because they had leverage." Lisa's voice broke. "Videos from college, stupid drunk mistakes I made 20 years ago. They said they'd release them if I ever spoke up, ruin my career, my marriage. But you're here now." "My husband left anyway. Found out about the refinancing when we couldn't make mortgage payments. My kids ask why we had to move to a tiny apartment. I lost everything protecting secrets for people who saw me as just another Mark." She pulled out a small recorder. "This is from last month. Sarah called me from prison." The recording was chilling. Sarah's voice cold and calculating even from behind bars. "Lisa, sweetie, you know those videos are safely stored, right? It would be such a shame if they accidentally got leaked while I'm locked up. Of course, if you could just send a little money to my commissary account." "She's blackmailing you from federal prison," Patricia said, already taking notes. "That's another 5 to 10 years on her sentence." But Lisa wasn't finished. "There's more. The foster kids. The ones everyone felt sorry for Sarah and Jake were collecting state checks for children who didn't exist." My blood ran cold. "What?" "Phantom foster kids. They had a contact in social services who would approve placements on paper. Sarah and Jake would collect the monthly stipends, $800 per child, for kids who were never in their home." "How many?" 6 over 5 years. Do the math." Patricia did. "That's nearly 300,000 in fraud from a system designed to protect vulnerable children. That's why Emily and her siblings were so well trained in lying," Lisa continued. "They had to know the names and stories of their foster siblings in case anyone asked. 9-year-old Mia could recite 6 fake life stories from memory. I thought about Emily forced to carry such dark secrets. No wonder she'd finally broken and told the truth." "There's one more thing," Lisa said, pulling out a final document. "I hired a forensic accountant to trace everything after my divorce, Sarah and Jake. They have accounts you haven't found in the kids' names. They've been storing stolen money in accounts opened with their children's social security numbers since birth. That's why Sarah was so desperate to maintain custody," Patricia breathed. "She needed access to those accounts." "How much?" I asked. "Between the 3 kids, about 400,000. College funds, the accounts say. But Sarah had already started withdrawing for educational expenses, like her new car and Jake's gambling debts." My phone rang. Emily's foster mother. "Annabelle, Emily's asking to speak with you. She says it's urgent." I put her on speaker with Patricia's permission. Emily's voice was steady but concerned. "Aunt Annie, a woman came to school today, said she was from Mom's lawyer's office. Wanted to ask me questions about some bank accounts." Patricia grabbed the phone. "Emily, this is Ms. Grayson, the prosecutor. Did you talk to her?" "No. Mrs. Patterson taught us not to talk to strangers about the case, but she knew things about accounts in our names." "You did exactly right. We'll handle this." After reassuring Emily, Patricia made rapid calls. Within an hour, we learned that Sarah had hired a new lawyer, one willing to skirt ethics for a paycheck. They were trying to access the children's accounts before authorities found them. "We need those records immediately," Patricia told Lisa. "Can your forensic accountant testify?" "Already agreed to. He's as disgusted as I am." Over the next 3 hours, Lisa laid out every crime she knew about. The elderly neighbors Sarah befriended just to steal their medications and sell them. The car accidents Jake staged for insurance payouts. Even a marriage fraud scheme where Sarah helped illegal immigrants get green cards for $50,000 each, then blackmailed them for more money later. "Why keep all this evidence?" I asked. Lisa smiled bitterly. "Insurance. I knew eventually they'd turn on me, too. Sarah doesn't have friends, just future victims. I wanted protection when my turn came." "Smart." "Too late, but smart." She gathered her courage. "Annabelle, I know you don't owe me anything, but would you be willing to write a victim impact statement for my sentencing?" "Your sentencing?" "I'm turning myself in. For my part in the early schemes. Patricia says with cooperation I might get probation and community service. It's better than living in fear." I looked at this woman who'd made my teenage years miserable, now stripped of pretense and asking for something she didn't deserve. But hadn't I learned that sometimes people could choose to change? "I'll think about it," I said finally. Patricia drove me home, the box of new evidence between us. "This changes everything," she said. "With Lisa's testimony and documentation, Sarah's looking at another 20 years minimum. Jake too. What about the kids' accounts? We'll freeze them tonight. That money will go into actual trust funds for their education managed by the state until they're adults." "Good. They deserve something clean from this mess." That evening, Emily called again. "Aunt Annie, I heard you met with Lisa today." Word traveled fast in foster care networks. I did. "She was mean to you, wasn't she, when you were young?" "Yes. But she's telling the truth now." "Seems like it." Emily was quiet for a moment. "It's weird, isn't it? How people can be bad for so long and then choose to be good like Grandma Martha. She did terrible things but told the truth at the end. It is weird and complicated. My therapist says people are complicated, that good people can do bad things and bad people can choose to change. It's confusing. Very confusing, but you know what helps? What? Looking at what they do now, not just what they did then. Actions matter more than words. Like Lisa bringing evidence even though she'll get in trouble. Exactly like that. After we hung up, I sat in my apartment thinking about unlikely alliances. Lisa Chen mean girl turned whistleblower. Uncle Robert enabler turned truth teller. Even Martha criminal mastermind turned confessor. The next morning brought chaos. News of the phantom foster kids had leaked, creating a media frenzy. Foster fraud, how one couple stole from children who never existed, dominated headlines. Sarah's new lawyer withdrew from the case, suddenly discovering ethical boundaries when the spotlight turned his way. But the real bombshell came from the forensic accountant's investigation. Hidden in the complex web of accounts, he'd found connections to other families running similar scams. Sarah and Jake weren't just criminals, they were part of a network. "It's like a franchise," Patricia explained during an emergency meeting. They'd teach other couples the foster fraud scheme for a cut of the profits. We're looking at dozens of phantom children across 5 states. The FBI took over, RICO charges expanded, and Sarah's 22-year sentence suddenly looked optimistic. Jake, trying to save himself, gave up every contact, every scheme, every crime he could remember. Lisa testified before a grand jury for 6 hours. She submitted to interrogation polygraphs and background checks. In the end, Patricia was right probation and 500 hours of community service, specifically helping fraud victims rebuild their credit. "I want to do more," Lisa told me after her sentencing. "Start a nonprofit, maybe. Help people spot scammers before they strike." From mean girl to advocate, trying to be. I have kids, Annabelle. What legacy do I want to leave them? The woman who helped steal from fake foster children, or the woman who helped stop it? I thought about Emily's words on redemption and change. The second one sounds better. Unexpectedly, we started working together. Lisa's insider knowledge of how scammers operated, combined with my experience as a victim, created a powerful educational tool. We spoke at community centers warning about family fraud, teaching people to recognize red flags. Never underestimate the power of shame, Lisa would tell audiences. I helped my best friend commit crimes because I was too ashamed to admit she was using me. Shame keeps victims silent and enables predators. One evening after a particularly well-attended seminar, Lisa approached me nervously. "I need to tell you something else, about high school." "Lisa, we don't need to rehash." "No, I need to say this. Senior year, when Sarah started that rumor about you and the chemistry teacher, I knew it was a lie. I had proof it was a lie. But I kept quiet because contradicting Sarah meant losing my place in the popular crowd." The memory stung even now, weeks of whispers, accusations of formal investigation that found nothing because there was nothing to find. But mud sticks, and I'd graduated under a cloud of suspicion. "Why tell me now?" "Because I'm done keeping Sarah's secrets. All of them." She pulled out her phone, showing me saved messages from 2006. I kept everything. Texts where she bragged about making it up planned, how to spread it, laughed about ruining your reputation. I've already given copies to Patricia in case they help with character evidence. 17 years later, vindication for something I'd thought would haunt me forever. Thank you. Don't thank me, I should have done it then. Been brave then. Maybe if one person had stood up to Sarah early, she wouldn't have become what she did. Or maybe she was always going to be a predator. We'll never know. The alliance with Lisa opened other doors. Former friends of Sarah's reached out, sharing their own stories of manipulation and theft. A Facebook group formed, Survivors of Sarah and Jake, growing to 300 members within weeks. Each story painted the same picture-charming couple befriends you, gains trust, creates crisis, asks for help, then either vanishes or blackmails you for more. The foster fraud was just their most lucrative scheme among dozens. Emily watched all of this unfold with her characteristic wisdom. "It's like Mom and Dad were viruses," she said during one of our dinners, spreading their sickness to everyone they touched. But now people are getting vaccinated by learning the truth. That's a pretty accurate metaphor. My therapist says I use metaphors to process trauma. Also, I'm writing about it for English class. My teacher says I have a gift for narrative. What are you writing about? How family isn't just blood, it's choice. Like how Lisa chose to tell the truth, even though Mom wasn't her blood family to protect. How you chose to protect us, even though we were weapons used against you. How lies are inherited, but truth is chosen. This 13-year-old had more wisdom than most adults. That sounds like a powerful essay. Mrs. Patterson is going to help me submit it to a youth writing contest. The prompt is about overcoming adversity. She grinned. I think I qualify. Watching Emily thrive despite everything gave me hope. If she could transform trauma into truth manipulation into wisdom, then maybe all of us touched by Sarah's poison could heal. The network of survivors became something beautiful. People who'd been isolated in their shame found community. Victims became advocates. Even Lisa, working off her community service hours, discovered a gift for teaching others to spot predators. "You know what the ironic part is?" Lisa said one evening as we prepared for another seminar. "Sarah always said she was building a legacy. Well, she did, just not the one she intended." She was right. Sarah's legacy wasn't wealth or power. It was the network of survivors who'd learned to spot manipulation. The children who chose truth over lies, the family members who finally stood up to generational theft. My phone buzzed, a text from Emily with a photo of her holding a certificate. "Won the writing contest. They want to publish my essay." Below that, a message from Lisa. 3 more people came forward today. Foster parents who ran the same scam. FBI says our work is helping build cases nationwide. And finally, an email from Patricia. Sarah's sentence enhanced to 40 years based on new evidence. Jake pleading to 30. The network is unraveling. I thought about that first no to housing demands, how it had seemed like such a small stand at the time. Now that refusal had exposed crimes across states, saved phantom foster children from continued exploitation, and created a community of survivors helping others. Sometimes the most unexpected alliances between former enemies united by truth created the strongest foundations for change. Lisa and I would never be friends in the traditional sense. Too much history, too much pain. But we were something else, now allies in the fight against predators who wore familiar faces. The phoenix wasn't rising alone. It was bringing an entire flock with it, all of us singed by the same fires, but choosing to soar rather than burn. 2 years, 730 days since I'd stood in my empty apartment, clutching keys my father demanded I return. Now November sunlight streamed through windows decorated with plants, gifted by support group members illuminating a space transformed from battlefield to sanctuary. "Aunt Annie, where do you want the desserts?" Emily asked, directing traffic as people arrived for our second annual Truthsgiving, our reimagined holiday for chosen family. At 15, Emily had grown into her wisdom. Her essay about family and choice had not only won contests, but sparked a youth-speaking career. She traveled to schools sharing her story, teaching other kids to recognize manipulation. The broken child who'd once performed fake tears now helped others find their authentic voices. Kitchen Island. I directed watching her confidently orchestrate the gathering. Mia's putting drinks on the side table. 11-year-old Mia had discovered a love of cooking in her adoptive home, arriving early to help prepare the feast. 7-year-old Tommy raced around with other kids, the sound of genuine laughter replacing the rehearsed emotions of his early years. Patricia and James Patterson, the children's adoptive parents, had become close friends. They'd taken 3 traumatized kids and given them stability therapy and unconditional love. Watching them thrive proved that blood didn't determine destiny. "Need help?" Lisa appeared at my elbow carrying her signature sweet potato casserole. Our alliance had evolved into something resembling friendship. Not the kind built on shared jokes and easy comfort, but something deeper mutual respect forged through choosing truth over comfortable lies. "Just enjoying the chaos," I admitted. "Good chaos," she corrected, watching her own teenagers help with setup. "The kind families are supposed to have." The apartment filled quickly. Uncle Robert arrived with his partner David, finally free to bring the man he'd hidden for 20 years. Cousin Jennifer brought her kids, and new boyfriend met through the fraud survivor support network. Marcus from the warehouse, now my regional manager, came with his wife. Brenda brought her famous cornbread and business advice that had helped me advance from district to regional manager in 18 months. Even unexpected guests appeared. Mrs. Chen, the elderly woman who'd hit Gerald with her cane, arrived with homemade dumplings and stories that had everyone laughing. 3 FBI agents who'd worked our case stopped by, briefly bringing updates on the nationwide foster fraud network they'd dismantled, 47 arrests across 12 states. Hundreds of phantom children removed from fraudulent roles. "This is what family looks like," Patricia Grayson announced, raising her glass of cider. "People who choose each other protect each other and celebrate truth even when lies would be easier." To chosen family, we toasted the words carrying weight only survivors understood. As dinner progressed, I found myself observing more than participating. 2 years ago, I'd eaten Thanksgiving alone in a hotel room, hiding from family who saw my existence as an ATM. Now my home overflowed with people who'd proven their loyalty through actions, not blood. "You're quiet," Emily noted, sliding into the seat beside me as others mingled. "Just thinking." About them. Them didn't need definition. Sarah serving her enhanced sentence with no possibility of parole for 28 more years. Jake in minimum security cooperating with authorities to unravel every scheme. Gerald, who'd suffered a mild stroke in prison, but refused to see me clinging to his anger like a lifeline. Martha, who wrote monthly letters I sometimes read, documenting her journey toward accountability. A little, but mostly about us, how far we've all come. Emily pulled out her phone, showing me an email. Speaking of which, Random House wants to publish my memoir. They're offering a real advance and everything. Emily, that's incredible. I want to call it Choosing Truth, a Foster Child's Journey from Manipulation to Authenticity. My therapist says it could help other kids in similar situations. 15 years old with a book deal. I hugged her tightly, this niece who'd become more daughter than Sarah ever allowed. There's something else, she said quietly. The advance is substantial. I want to start a scholarship fund for kids aging out of foster care, especially those who exposed family crimes. Turn our trauma into someone else's opportunity. I blinked back tears. The cycle hadn't just broken, it had reversed entirely. The evening continued with the comfortable chaos of real family. No performed emotions, no guilt trips, no manipulation disguised as love. Just people who'd chosen honesty over harmony, building something authentic from the ashes of deception. As guests began departing, each took a moment for private gratitude. Marcus thanked me for recommending him for promotion. Jennifer credited our support group with giving her courage to leave her toxic ex. Robert whispered that he'd finally slept through the night without guilt, a 2-year journey to peace. Lisa lingered, helping with cleanup. I never thanked you, she said suddenly. For what? For letting me make amends. For showing me that people can change, even people who did terrible things. My kids have their mother back because you gave me a second chance I didn't deserve. You gave yourself that chance by choosing truth. Maybe, but you showed me it was possible. After everyone left, I found myself in the same spot where this journey began, standing in my living room, holding keys. But now those keys opened doors to speaking engagements about family fraud. To the nonprofit, Lisa and I had started helping victims nationwide. To a future unencumbered by toxic obligation. My phone buzzed. A text from Martha permitted one holiday message. Watched your fraud prevention segment on the news. Proud of the woman you've become. Thank you for showing me it's never too late to choose truth. Happy Thanksgiving, Annabelle. Love without manipulation, Mom. I didn't respond. Boundaries remained important. But for the first time, her words didn't sting. They simply existed, acknowledged, and released. Emily had left her journal on the coffee table open to her latest entry. With teenage permission to snoop, I read. 2 years ago, I thought family meant loyalty at any cost. Aunt Annie taught me family means loving people enough to tell them the truth, even when it hurts. Real family celebrates your success instead of stealing it. Real family protects your peace instead of destroying it. Real family chooses love over lies every single day. Tomorrow I speak at another school, sharing our story. Kids always ask if I miss my birth parents. I tell them yes, I miss who they could have been, but I don't miss who they chose to be. And that's the difference between grieving loss and accepting reality. And Annie says the phoenix rises alone but builds its nest with others who've survived their own fires. I think that's beautiful. We're all phoenixes here, turning ashes into art, trauma into triumph. Next week marks 2 years since the trials. 2 years since everything fell apart and came together simultaneously. I'm grateful it happened, not for the pain, but for the truth. Because lies might be inherited, but truth is chosen, and we choose it every day. I closed the journal, wiping away tears. This teenager understood what had taken me 30 years to learn. My apartment, once a symbol of independence, had become something more, a headquarters for healing, a haven for truth-tellers, a home that housed love without conditions. The family that had tried to steal this space now resided in federal prisons, their legacy reduced to cautionary tales and case law. But the family that grew from their ashes, we thrived in ways they'd never comprehend, rich in everything they'd tried to steal: trust, authenticity, unconditional love. Outside, November, snow began falling, blanketing the world in fresh white. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, more speaking engagements, more survivors seeking help, more truth to tell. But tonight, in an apartment earned through honest work and defended with courage, I was exactly where I belonged. The phoenix had risen. The nest was built, and the flock that gathered here would carry the message forward. Family isn't about blood or obligation. It's about choosing each other, protecting peace, and loving without price tags. To everyone reading this who's trapped in toxic family dynamics, who's been called selfish for having boundaries, who's been gaslit into doubting their own reality, you're not alone. Truth might cost everything, but lies cost even more. Choose wisely. As Emily's memoir would conclude, sometimes the greatest act of family loyalty is refusing to enable destruction. Sometimes love means saying no, and sometimes the family you choose is worth more than the family you're given. The apartment lights dimmed on another successful gathering, but the light we'd kindled of truth, over deception, choice over obligation, would burn bright for generations. The Hutchinson crime family was finished, but the Hutchinson truth tellers. We were just getting started. If this story resonated with you, if you've faced family manipulation or financial abuse, know that you're not alone. Have you ever had to choose between family loyalty and personal truth? What gave you the strength to stand firm? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. Your story might be the encouragement someone else needs to hear today. And if you found value in this narrative, please subscribe, and share it with others who might be struggling with toxic family dynamics. Together, we can break cycles of manipulation and build communities of support. Thank you for joining me on this journey from deception to truth, from isolation to community, from surviving to thriving. Remember, boundaries aren't selfish, truth isn't cruel, and choosing yourself isn't wrong, it's necessary. Until next time, stay strong, stay true, and remember that the family you choose can be more powerful than the family you're given. With gratitude and hope, Annabelle.